Chapter 16. This faint sentence did not use a loud voice, but it caused the entire battle arena to instantly become extremely quiet. The noise was instantly cut off as if someone was choking their throat. Everyone's gaze turned towards the source of the voice at the same time. A well-proportioned young man in a black robe with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes walked over calmly. It was Yi Guchen. How is this possible? He didn't run away. He really came. What is he thinking? Is he here to ask for a beating? Maybe he's here to beg cousin Xia Yan for mercy. Ha! All kinds of guessing voices came one after another, but Yi Guchen did not care at all. His mind was watertight and would not be affected by external things. He really came. But it's a pity that the young sword grandmaster is now like this. The elder of the Song family sighed in the stands. Yi Guchen, who had once suppressed the genius of the Song family, Song Daozhen, until he could not raise his head and could only be ranked second for 10,000 years, had now fallen to this state and was provoked by Xia Yan. So what if he's here? He's just asking to be humiliated. Bei Ming snorted. Everyone knew that Bei Dengue and Yi Guchen had a grudge against each other. Even the Bei family was extremely hostile towards Yi Guchen. Sigh. Who knows? My Xia family has raised an ingrate. If it wasn't for the genius of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Yubing would have been plotted against by this scoundrel. Xia Yuan sighed pretentiously. Hearing the words Starry Sword Pavilion, the elders of the other families were slightly stunned. The Starry Sword Pavilion was not a force of the Saint Origin dynasty, but they knew that if the Starry Sword Pavilion took action, it would not be too difficult to wipe out the Saint Origin dynasty. The so-called 5 great families of the Milky Way province were not even ants in front of the Starry Sword Pavilion. They were just dust. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't figure out how Xia Yubing managed to form a relationship with the proud son of heaven of the Starry Sword Pavilion. As if he saw the seriousness in the eyes of the elders of the other families, the smile on Xia Yuan's face widened. At this moment, Xia Yan saw Yi Guchen in the fighting ring. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Good, you have come at the right time. Originally, I thought that you were not only a treacherous person, but also a coward. Now, it seems that you are worthy of me taking action. Xia Yan puffed out his chest and spoke in a critical tone. There's no point in talking anymore. Xia Yan, my time is limited. I'll defeat you in one move, Yi Guchen said calmly. What? Not only Xia Yan, but Xia Shishir, Xia Ying, the many disciples of the Xia family in the crowd, as well as the people in the stands, were all stunned for a moment. What followed was a roar of laughter. Is this Yi Guchen here to be funny? Does he still think he's the former sword master, the leader of the 7 geniuses of the Sky River province? When Xia Shishir saw Yi Guchen's arrival, she was originally delighted. Although her cultivation was crippled, her ambition was still there. However, after hearing Yi Guchen's words, she could only shake her head. Has he already started to talk big? Xia Shishir was a little disappointed. If even she was no match for Xia Yan, how could Yi Guchen, whose cultivation had fallen to the body-refining realm, be a match for him? This is the biggest joke in the world. Xia Ying's lips curled into a mocking smile. Her face was scarred by Yi Guchen, so she hated Yi Guchen to the core. Now, what she hoped to see the most was Yi Guchen being crushed by Xia Yan. Has Yi Guchen lost his mind? Is he still immersed in his former glory? Xia Yuan shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The other elders also did not think highly of Yi Guchen. What did you say? Say it again. Xia Yan scratched his ear with his finger, as if he did not hear clearly. Yi Guchen did not reply. Instead, he slowly walked into the arena. He had even killed Bei Ling, a genius at level 6 of the Origin Essence realm. Why would he care about Xia Yan, who was at level 5 of the Origin Essence realm? Clang! As soon as Jie Chen appeared, his sword made a buzzing sound. Yi Guchen circulated all the blood in his body, and a blood-red flame rose from the tip of his sword. Then, he swung his sword forward. It was one of the 3 Xiantian sword arts of the Xia family, Aurora Quick Sword. It was also a small skill, Aurora's passing. Fast. Too fast. Xia Yan only reacted when Yiguchen's sword was almost in front of him. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly raised his 9-ringed saber. His profound qi surged to resist Yiguchen's sword. But did he have a chance? No. Clang. The tip of the sword touched the weakest part of the 9-ringed saber. Along with the explosion of the blood in his body, the 9-ringed saber broke into 2 with a cracking sound. Then, Yiguchen changed from a stab to a sweep, and the blade hit Xia Yan's face, sending him flying. Puchi. Xia Yan, who had won first place in the Xia family sparring competition and said that he would kick Yiguchen out of the Xia family, was now lying on the ground below the arena like a dead dog. His face was swollen and bruised. The entire arena was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. A horrified expression appeared on the faces of all the Xia family disciples, including the Xia family elders. Yiguchen's sword was pointed at the ground. His body was slender, and the wind blew past his black hair. From the beginning to the end, he was calm, and indifferent. Sword Master. This was the real Sword Master. One move, it was really just one move. Xia Shishir's delicate body swayed slightly, as if she could not stand properly. Previously, she had advised Yiguchen to leave and live an ordinary life, but now, her advice was laughable. Xia Shishir stared at Yiguchen in the arena. In a trance, she seemed to see the sword master that she could only look up to, Yiguchen. Impossible, this must be fake. Brother Xia Yan is an expert at the 5th level of the Essence Realm. How could he be defeated by this trash in one move? This must be fake. Xia Ying shook her head crazily. She could not believe it, and her beautiful face with a scar was twitching. In the stands, Xia Yuan suddenly stood up and stared at Yiguchen. Minor accomplishment. How did this Yiguchen cultivate the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment? It was very difficult to cultivate the Xiantian sword art to the minor accomplishment realm. Xia Yuan was in his 40s, but he only managed to cultivate the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment realm. How old was Yiguchen? If Xia Yuan knew that Yiguchen had comprehended the Aurora Quick Sword to the minor accomplishment realm in less than a month, he would probably want to kill himself with a piece of tofu. Yiguchen's cultivation is only at the body refining realm, but his blood qi is terrifyingly strong, and his explosive power is also terrifying. But he didn't have such a strong blood qi in the past. The Song family elder was puzzled. This kid is really lucky. He actually survived Dangue's attack. Dark Northa's expression was gloomy as he coldly thought to himself. Aren't you already crippled? How can you still? Under the arena, Xia Yan's face was swollen, and he could not speak clearly. At this moment, he was no longer arrogant. He looked at Yiguchen with fear in his eyes. That's right, fear. It was as if he had seen the sword grandmaster of the past, the one who had suppressed so many geniuses and ranked first among the 7 sky prides, Yiguchen. Yiguchen ignored Xia Yan and turned to walk down the arena. Xia Yuan, who was in the stands, seemed to want to say something. But at this moment, boom! A majestic wave of vital energy suddenly came from the Xia family's core area. The vital energy was like frost and snow, and once it erupted, it actually covered the surrounding artificial mountains and plants with a layer of frost. That place is where Yubing is cultivating in seclusion. Could it be? Xia Yuan's face suddenly revealed a look of surprise. Not only that, the disciples of the Xia family, who were shocked by Yiguchen, all turned their attention to that area. Accompanying the surging true qi was a terrifying sword intent. That sword intent seemed to faintly form a somewhat illusory whirlpool of water in the air. Shockingly, that whirlpool was made up of countless densely packed sword qi. Sword essence, it's actually sword essence. Xia Yuan and the other elders were all speechless. Sword essence. That was something that only 1 in 10,000 swordsmanship geniuses could comprehend. Following the earth-shattering vital energy and the terrifying sword essence whirlpool, a cold and elegant figure slowly descended from midair. Chapter 17. It was a young girl wearing a blue silk dress. Her clothes were fitted to her body, revealing her well-proportioned and beautiful curves. This girl's skin was as white as snow, as if it was carved out of snow jade. She had a plain and cold face, and her face was as cold and arrogant as an iceberg. Her pupils were blue like ice crystals, and she looked both magnificent and cold. Her long hair was also ice blue. As it fluttered in the wind, ice crystals scattered down, giving her a mysterious beauty. The girl was cold, arrogant, and indifferent. She was like an ice goddess, making people look up to her. It was Xia Yubing. Its cousin Yubing. She finally came out of seclusion. Its sister Yubing. She just fell from the sky. She should have broken through to the Qi refinement realm, and can temporarily stay in the air. She really is in the Qi refinement realm, and it's the third revolution. The elders in the stands all sucked in a breath of cold air. They were already very surprised that Xia Yubing could break through to the Qi refinement realm, but they didn't expect Xia Yubing to break through 3 small realms, and directly reach the third revolution. This kind of cultivation, this kind of talent, was really terrifying. Good, very good. Yubing really didn't disappoint me. Xia Yuan tightly clenched his fist, unable to hide the excitement in his heart. The shadow of Xia Yan being defeated in one move also disappeared in an instant. Compared to Xia Yubing, Xia Yan was insignificant. Qi refinement realm. Yi Guqin looked at the cold and beautiful girl, and frowned slightly. He didn't expect Xia Yubing to break through to the Qi refinement realm so quickly. It seems that the inheritance of the North River Sword King is no small matter. This Xia Yubing is a bit troublesome. Yi Guqin thought. He wasn't afraid of Xia Yubing. Even if Xia Yubing obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King, he was confident that he could quickly surpass her. But now, the gap between his cultivation and Xia Yubing's was really too big. Cousin Yubing, I. Seeing Xia Yubing appear, Xia Yan wanted to say something, but stopped. He was a bit ashamed. Xia Yubing didn't even look at Xia Yan, but turned to Yi Guqin. Their gazes collided in the void. The entire square instantly fell silent. They knew that in the past, Yi Guqin and Xia Yubing were publicly acknowledged as Dao companions. If it wasn't for the incident in the Sword King's secret domain, it wasn't impossible for the two of them to become Dao companions. However, there wasn't the slightest bit of warmth in their eyes. As if sensing the bottomless depths of Yi Guqin's black eyes, Xia Yubing's brows twitched. She could feel that Yi Guqin was different from before. Yubing, I didn't expect that you would be able to recultivate and even defeat Xia Yan with a single strike. Xia Yubing spoke, her voice as ethereal as snow. I didn't expect you to be able to stand in front of me so calmly. Yi Guqin's tone was cold, but there was an uncontrollable resentment in his heart. This was the hatred that the young sword sect Yi Guqin had towards Xia Yubing. Oh. Isn't that what Yubing wanted to say to you? After all, I didn't kill you even when you treated me like that in the Sword King's secret domain. Furthermore, I'm still allowing you to live in the Xia family. Xia Yubing's tone was calm, as if she was talking about something insignificant. Xia Yubing's words caused the disciples of the Xia family to curse Yi Guqin. You should know best what the truth is. There's no benefit in explaining. Even if you obtain the inheritance of the North River Sword King, I will accompany you to the end. Not only you, there's also that Gu Xiaoyang. Yi Guqin indifferently said. Although you've started recultivating, you don't have the sword vein, the innate sword embryo, and your talent is gone. How can you make a comeback? Not to mention Sir Gu, even I can suppress you with a flip of my hand. Xia Yubing's tone wasn't heavy, but the meaning behind it made Yi Guqin frown. Is that so? Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. The North River Sword King was an expert of the sword Tao who had crossed the spirit bridge. The inheritance he left behind is something you can never imagine. Xia Yubing was very confident, and it could be felt from her tone. Obtaining the inheritance of the North River Sword King was equivalent to obtaining the inheritance of a great sect. One could imagine how much a person's strength would increase with the resources and ability of a sect. Originally, the inheritance of the North River Sword King should have been obtained by Yi Guqin. As a 7th-rank Heaven's Pride, if he obtained the Sword King's inheritance, his future would truly be limitless. Unfortunately, this smooth path was directly destroyed by Xia Yubing and Gu Xiaoyang. So, Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile. Xia Yubing opened her mouth and condensed her voice into a thread of true qi, transmitting it only to Yi Guqin's ears. In the past, I could only follow behind you and become your background. I begged you to teach me the Myriad Sword Codex and the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, but you refused. But now, I don't need it anymore. I have spirit-level cultivation techniques, sword arts, and even spirit inscriptions divine weapons. Step by step, I will become an existence that you can only look up to. Xia Yubing's words were transmitted using true qi, so only Yi Guqin could hear them. Yi Guqin wasn't surprised by this explanation. Originally, Yi Guqin also knew that Xia Yubing was ambitious. However, he never expected that Xia Yubing would betray him like that for the sake of her own ambition. Just now, you defeated Xia Yan with a single sword strike. Now, Yubing will return the favor and defeat you with a single sword strike. Xia Yubing said coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire crowd erupted. This was simply a slap to Yi Guqin's face, giving him a taste of his own medicine. No one would think that Xia Yubing was boasting. She had the confidence and strength to speak like this. The faces of the Xia family disciples below the stage flushed red as they shouted Xia Yubing's name with all their might. On the stage, the origin ring on Xia Yubing's slender fingers flashed, and a 4-foot-long sword appeared with a sonorous sound. This sword seemed to be made of ice and snow. It was dark blue in color and had an icicle-like cutting surface. The tip of the sword emitted a faint cold air. Faintly, some traces of spirit inscriptions could be faintly seen on the translucent sword body. This was a spirit inscription's divine weapon, and its grade wasn't low either. It wasn't much weaker than Yi Guqin's Calamity Dust sword. This sword is called Glacier. It was once the sword of the North River Sword King Chu Donglu. Today, I will use it to defeat you. Xia Yubing's jade-like fingers stroked the sword body. It was hard to say whether the sword body was more translucent or her fingers were more translucent. She attacked with her sword. It was only one attack. On the glacier sword, a total of 20 spirit inscriptions were lit up. At the same time, these spirit inscriptions were connected to the spirit inscriptions. The dark blue spirit inscriptions were instantly lit up. The entire glacier sword suddenly exploded with cold air. The reason why a spirit inscription's divine weapon was stronger than a normal spirit weapon was because of the spirit inscriptions. Xia Yubing's attack had directly activated one of the spirit inscriptions on the glacier sword. As the spirit inscriptions were lit up, an incomparably cold air spread out from the sword body. At the same time, true qi surged around Xia Yubing's body. This power was far stronger than profound qi. Her sword swept out. The vigorous sword qi was like a blizzard, covering the sky and earth as it surged towards Yi Guqin. Compared to this terrifying sword technique, Bei Ling's stormy wave sword technique paled in comparison. This isn't one of the 3 great Xiantian sword techniques of the Xia family. Yi Guqin's heart trembled. It was very difficult for him to receive this attack, but he had to. This is one of the inheritances left behind by the North River Sword King. It's a spirit-level sword technique that's far stronger than Xiantian's sword techniques, the glacier sword technique. Xia Yubing said coldly. It's actually a spirit-level sword technique. An uproar sounded. All of the Xia family disciples were shocked by Xia Yubing's strength. She could even use a spirit-level sword technique. As expected of our Xia family's phoenix. Xia Yuan's face revealed an excited expression. A spirit-level sword technique could cause the spirit qi of heaven and earth to resonate. Its power was far stronger than Xiantian's sword techniques. Yi Guqin frowned. He immediately used the Taiji sword technique. The tip of his sword drew a circle. It was extremely simple. Boom! When the sword swept over, Yi Guqin's body shook violently. Even though he had passed the first minor tribulation and cultivated the body metamorphose scripture to minor completion, he still felt as if his body was about to collapse. Xia Yubing suppressed Yi Guqin in terms of cultivation base, spirit mark divine weapon, and sword technique. If it was an ordinary person, even if it was the other heavens chosen who hadn't broken through to the qi refining realm, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to receive Xia Yubing's sword. Not to mention that Yi Guqin's cultivation base was only at the 9th layer of body tempering realm. This sword is probably real. If he hasn't broken through to the qi refining realm, it's almost impossible to receive it. The Song family elder thought. Crack, the sound of bones cracking could be heard from within his body. At the same time, Yi Guqin's skin began to crack. Even though there was a layer of skin under his skin, it couldn't withstand the might of this sword. The entire stage seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure of this sword qi. More than half of it cracked. At the same time, an extremely cold qi spread to Yi Guqin's body. It seemed as if it was going to freeze and crack him. I'm going to take this sword. With a boom, Yi Guqin ignited all the qi and blood in his body. Raging blood flames soared and blended together with the extremely cold qi, grinding away at each other. Xia Yubing's eyes were filled with surprise. She didn't expect Yi Guqin to be able to endure for so long. This won't do. With my current cultivation base, I can't use the Taiji sword technique to reflect the sword qi. I can only forcefully receive it. Yi Guqin's mind was as firm as iron. Even though his body was covered in countless wounds and his skin was slightly purple from the cold, he still didn't make a sound. The Xia family disciples who were originally cheering were silent. They didn't expect that Yi Guqin would actually be able to receive this sword. Finally, the power of this sword had been worn away to the end. The entire stage was covered in a thick layer of frost. This was caused by the spirit-level sword technique drawing in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and turning it into cold qi. Yi Guqin violently spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he still stood perfectly straight. Blood flowed from all over his body. He seemed to be in a sorry state, but no one could look at him directly. Xia Yubing frowned. She seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied that she wasn't able to defeat Yi Guqin in one strike. He actually received it. This Yi Guqin is truly worthy of being a former sword master. Although they didn't want to admit it, whether it was the Xia family disciples or the elders in the stands, they all sighed inwardly. Clearly, the shock that Yi Guqin gave them was still too great. There was a gap of 2 realms between them. It was said that every realm was like a mountain. Facing a qi refinement martial scholar, Yi Guqin had actually received this sword with his body refinement martial scholar cultivation base. This was simply inconceivable. If it was anyone else, it would be absolutely impossible for them to do so. I will receive this sword of yours. In the future, I will definitely return it. Yi Guqin frowned coldly and turned to leave. Wait, at this moment, Bei Ming stood up from the stands. With an uncontrollable murderous intent, he locked onto Yi Guqin. You are the masked man who killed the genius of the Bei family, Bei Ling, in the Cloud Valley Mountains. What? Once these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Who was Bei Ling? He was the genius of the Bei family. Although he wasn't as strong as the Thunderbolt Sword Master, Bei Angelica, he was still stronger than the average essence martial scholar. For example, although Xia Yan's strength was not bad, compared to Bei Ling, he was still slightly weaker. However, Yi Guqin was able to kill Bei Ling. Defeating Xia Yan with one strike wasn't that inconceivable anymore. No wonder he could defeat cousin Xia Yan with one strike. He is someone who can kill Bei Ling, he is too strong. His cultivation base has already been destroyed, but he is still able to kill a genius of the essence martial scholar with his body refinement martial scholar cultivation base. This is unbelievable. Bei Ming's expression turned even colder when he heard the discussions of the Xia family disciples. Chapter 18. Dark North walked down from the stage, his murderous intent rising. In the Cloud Valley mountain range, it was rumored that the person who killed our clan's Bei Ling had used a strange sword technique that could absorb sword qi. Right now, you have actually used such a sword technique as well. Moreover, with the level of cultivation that you have displayed, even though you might not succeed in killing Bei Ling, it is definitely not impossible. While Dark North was questioning, a powerful spiritual energy poured out from his body. This elder of the Bei family was a godly soul realm expert. The 4 stages of the mortal evolution realm were body tempering, essence qi, qi refining, and godly soul. Dark North had reached the end of the 4 stages. Next, he would need to break through the life and death threshold and build the heaven and earth spiritual bridge. Although he had not broken through, the godly soul realm was already considered strong in the Milky Way province. Facing Dark North's spiritual pressure, Yi Guqin remained calm. He knew that there was no need to deny it. I did kill him. Yi Guqin admitted. Kid, you dare to admit it? Dark North's murderous intent rose and he was about to attack. At this moment, Yi Guqin took out an ordinary jade token. It was the identification token of a core disciple of the Xia family. Although I am about to leave the Xia family, at least I still have this item. In the Xia family sparring square, an elder of the Bei family openly killed a core disciple of the Xia family. I wonder if this will cause a storm. Yi Guqin's tone was calm. He used to be the leader of the prodigies. Naturally, he had the right to receive preferential treatment from the Xia family. He had also helped many Xia family disciples. He had a clear conscience towards the Xia family. However, the Xia family's attitude towards Yi Guqin was disappointing. This was also the last time that Yi Guqin would use the jade token of a core disciple of the Xia family. You, good kid. Dark North's expression turned even colder when he felt Xia Yuan's hesitation. The truth was just as Yi Guqin said. If Dark North had openly killed a core disciple of the Xia family during the sparring competition, the Xia family's reputation would have been ruined. Although many people, including Xia Yuan, did not like Yi Guqin, they had to admit that he had an identity jade token. He is merely a stray dog. Elder Bei, after Yi Guqin is expelled from my Xia clan, you can naturally act and kill him. Xia Yubing, who was standing coldly by the side, suddenly opened her mouth and spoke. In a split second, Yi Guqin's gaze was like a sword as he stared straight at Xia Yubing. His gaze was as sharp as a sword and as cold as a demon's. Xia Yubing's heart trembled slightly. She actually took a small step back. How is that possible? I was actually scared by him. Xia Yubing furrowed her brows, feeling a bit vexed. A woman's heart is the most poisonous. Xia Yubing, you will regret the words you said today. Yi Guqin coldly stared at her. Alright, for the sake of the Xia family, I'll let you live for another day. If you dare to step out of the Xia family's door, I'll kill you immediately. North Sea's voice was filled with murderous intent. Who wants to kill Chen Er? You? A clear and cold voice suddenly rang out. It was a very light and gentle voice, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder as it resounded in North Sea's ears. Who is it? North Sea furiously shouted. Not good, could it be? Xia Yuan's heart tightened as cold sweat dripped down his back. The reason why he didn't chase Yi Guqin away and the reason why he revealed a hesitant expression just now was because Yi Guqin had an aunt whose whereabouts were unknown. Moreover, her strength was unfathomable. In the distant sky, a beautiful figure slowly walked over. With every step she took, a lotus flower would rise from the void beneath her feet. Lotus flowers blossomed with every step. What is that? Heavens! Walking on the void. Only experts who have broken through the threshold of life and death and stepped onto the spiritual bridge can traverse the void. That's Yiguchin's aunt. She's actually so powerful. Terrifying, too terrifying. This kind of expert. North Sea, who was filled with murderous intent and had a fierce expression, was now so frightened that his soul almost left his body. Even his withered fingers were slightly trembling. Although he was an expert in the divine soul realm, he was still in the extraordinary realm. However, once a person broke through the threshold of life and death and stepped onto the spiritual bridge, he was no longer an ordinary person. This was the so-called shedding of the mortal body and transcending into the divine. In the sky, the beautiful white-robed woman's sleeves fluttered in the wind. She looked like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. There was a lotus flower mark on her fair forehead, and her face was covered with a veil. Those who didn't know would definitely think that the face under the veil was as beautiful as a fairy. However, only Yiguchin knew. This aunt wasn't his biological aunt, but his father's friend. Her name was Xuansu. His father had entrusted Yiguchin to Xuansu since he was young, and Xuansu had always doted on Yiguchin. However, Xuansu's face was always covered with a veil. Due to an accident, when Xuansu was bathing, the young Yiguchin accidentally barged in and saw Xuansu's face without a veil. At first glance, Yiguchin was almost scared to tears. Because it was an extremely ugly face. His entire face was uneven, covered in earthworm-like veins, and his lips were a strange bluish-purple color. He was like a zombie, and he looked strange and terrifying. From then on, Yiguchin never got close to this aunt of his. Even after putting on the veil and Xuansu became a fairy with a white robe and a jade veil covering her face, Yiguchin never got close to her. However, even though Yiguchin resisted like this, Xuansu still took care of him to the best of her ability. After Yiguchin went through the incident in the Sword King mystic realm, the first thing Xuansu did was to search for elixirs and treasures that could treat Yiguchin's injuries. She only returned now. Are you the one who wants to kill Chen-er? In midair, Xuansu, whose face was covered with a veil, looked like a goddess from the 9 heavens descending to the mortal world. Although her voice was ethereal, a trace of killing intent could be felt. Yiguchin was Xuansu's reverse scale. Touching it would make her angry. No. This may be a misunderstanding. Maybe I got the wrong person. Dark North forced a smile and hurriedly waved his hand. Oh, all right then. Just as Dark North heaved a sigh of relief, Xuansu suddenly attacked. She stretched out a slender jade-like hand and pointed out a finger. Endless genuine chi gathered and turned into a condensed beam of light that swept toward Dark North. Run! Feeling the terrifying power of the light beam, Dark North did not even have the intention to fight back. He turned around and tried to escape. However, in an instant, the light beam pierced through the back of Dark North's head. Dark North was considered an expert in the entire Milky Way province. However, he had died just like that. The entire martial arts arena was dead silent. A divine soul realm expert died just like that. He died so easily. Xia Yuan's back was drenched in cold sweat. Although he did not show killing intent toward Yiguchin like Dark North, he did not treat him well either. He's dead. As for you. Xuansu lowered her head slightly. The only thing visible on her face was a pair of watery eyes that stared at Xia Yubing. Xia Yubing's expression changed drastically. Before she could do anything, Xuansu's slender waist moved. In the next instant, she appeared in front of Xia Yubing. So fast! Yiguchin exclaimed. That speed was so fast that even his naked eyes could not capture it. Please show mercy. At least you've stayed in my Xia family for so many years. Even if we didn't contribute, we've worked hard. Xia Yuan hurriedly shouted when he saw Xuansu attack Xia Yubing. Xia Yubing was the phoenix of the Xia family. If she died, it would be a fatal blow. However, Xuansu's attack was not to kill Xia Yubing. Slap! It was a resounding slap to the face, incomparably crisp and clear. It was Xuansu's jade-like hand that slapped Xia Yubing's face. Xia Yubing retreated a dozen steps. Soon, a red and swollen palm print appeared on her face. It somewhat destroyed Xia Yubing's temperament as a cold goddess. Xia Yubing was stunned by Xuansu's slap. She was stunned for a moment before she reacted. Her icy blue eyes stared at Xuansu as she clenched her fists. Yubing, why aren't you apologizing to Senior? Xia Yuan hurriedly ran over, afraid that Xia Yubing would do something rash. If she angered Xuansu, the entire Xia family would be turned upside down. After all, the person with the highest cultivation in the entire Xia family was an old ancestor who was in seclusion. His strength was far from Xuansu's. She had to apologize after being slapped. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely not be able to swallow this anger. However, Xia Yubing could still smile after taking a deep breath. She said gently, "It's Yubing's fault. Please forgive me, Senior." Xuansu's brows furrowed slightly. With Xia Yubing's attitude, with her cultivation and identity, she really couldn't make things difficult for her. However, Xuansu didn't plan to kill Xia Yubing, even though she knew that she might be one of the main culprits behind Yiguchen's death. This Xia Yubing can really endure. Yiguchen frowned. If Xia Yubing's personality was like Xia Ying's, he wouldn't take it to heart. However, she could endure with such a personality and was good at scheming. In the Sword King's secret realm, she had caused Yiguchen's downfall in one fell swoop. Such scheming, personality, courage, and now that she had obtained the Sword King's inheritance, she would definitely become a great enemy in the future if she wasn't eliminated early. Xia Yubing, you're really strong. Even I was deceived by you before. You actually let Chen be with you. Xuansu's voice was very cold. Yubing doesn't know what Senior is talking about. Xia Yubing's face didn't turn red, and her heart didn't skip a beat. Xuansu waved her sleeves and turned to Yiguchen's side. After seeing Yiguchen's injuries, Xuansu's eyes were filled with pity. However, she didn't dare to get too close to Yiguchen. She knew that ever since Yiguchen accidentally saw her true appearance when they were young, he was unwilling to get too close to her. "Auntie, I'm fine." Yiguchen smiled faintly. Xuansu was stunned. This was the first time Yiguchen took the initiative to talk to her in the past few years. It's good that you're fine. The reason I didn't kill that Xia Yubing is because I want you to deal with her yourself. I know. Let's go. Yiguchen suddenly reached out and grabbed Xuansu's hand. Xuansu's hand was very cold, like a piece of cold jade. The temperature was too abnormal. Xuansu was stunned again. Feeling the warmth from her palm, Xuansu's beautiful eyes faintly sparkled. She also grabbed Yiguchen's hand. This wasn't the will of the sword demon Duga Wubai. It was the original will of the owner of this body. He owed Xuansu too much. Just as Yiguchen was about to leave, he paused his steps. The jade token that represented the core disciple of the Xia family was thrown into the air. Then, sword light flashed. The jade tablet shattered and exploded in the air, breaking into countless pieces. From now on, I, Yiguchen, have nothing to do with the Xia family. And Xia Yubing, wait for me to return that sword strike. Chapter 19. Following the departure of Yiguchen and Xian Su, what had happened in the Xia clan today would definitely sweep through the entire Shanghai city and even the Milky Way prefecture like a tornado. There were rumors that Xia Yubing had returned to seclusion after Yiguchen and the others had left. However, she had left behind a message. If I had used my sword intent, Yiguchen would definitely have died. Although no one knew if she had said this to save face or if it really was so, at the very least, Xia Yubing's reputation had been greatly tarnished by this battle. After all, she had obtained the legacy of the North River Sword King and broken through to the third cycle of the Qi refinement realm. In the end, she had still been defeated by Yiguchen, who was only at the 9th layer of the body tempering realm. No matter what, Xia Yubing's halo had dimmed a little. In less than half a day, the news had reached the Bei clan. The patriarch of the Bei clan was furious, but there was nothing he could do. At the very least, they could not afford to offend Xian Su. Meanwhile, in a pavilion of the Bei clan, tables, chairs, and jade screens had been shattered one after another. A young man in luxurious robes had his face flushed with anger. Damn it, you actually killed my younger brother. Yi Guqin, you truly deserve to die. This young man was the prodigy of the Bei clan, the Thunderbolt Sword Master, Bei Dangui. Although he had yet to break through to the Qi refinement realm, he was only a step away. If I had been a little more ruthless back then, I could have killed him directly. However, he was ambushed by me and his aura was completely gone. Then, he was pushed into the water. How could he have survived? Bei Dangui could not understand. But no matter what, he knew that Yi Guqin had to be killed. Men, inform the patriarch that I will enter seclusion to break through to the Qi refinement realm in half a year's time. I believe that Yi Guqin will definitely not miss this opportunity. When the time comes. Bei Dangui's expression was cold and ruthless as he began to scheme again. On the outskirts of Shanghai City, in a small residence in a beautiful bamboo forest, Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground. Behind him, Xian Su was dressed in snow-white robes. She extended her hand and placed it on Yi Guqin's bare back. Streams of gentle and pure real qi flowed into Yi Guqin's body, nourishing his body that was riddled with scars. This healing process had already lasted for several days. Auntie, my injuries are no longer serious. Although Sword Demon was not used to calling such a young woman aunt, due to his experience, Xian Su was indeed sincere towards Yi Guqin, so it was natural for him to call her aunt. Xian Su retracted her hand and wiped away the sweat on her forehead. Although her cultivation was unfathomable, she had been providing pure qi day and night for the past few days. It was inevitable that she was exhausted. This Xia Yubing has obtained Shu Dongliu's inheritance. Her cold sword qi is extremely harmful to the human body. Chen, are you really alright? Xian Su seemed to be a little worried. Thank you for your concern, auntie. I'm fine. Yi Guqin smiled. He had passed the first minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body and could transform his blood into flames. Thus, he could somewhat restrain the icy sword qi. However, his current cultivation level was too low. That was why Xia Yubing's attack had left him in such a miserable state. Chen, it's all my fault. If I hadn't failed to see through Xia Yubing's heart, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Xian Su's watery eyes were filled with self-blame. How can I blame you for this? I was blind. Yi Guqin consoled her. Xian Su felt some warmth in her heart when she saw Yi Guqin become close to her again. She had always covered her face with a veil because she was afraid of scaring the young Yi Guqin. However, as time passed, wearing a veil seemed to have become a habit. Right, I've found some things outside during this period of time. They're all useful to you. With that, Xian Su's origin ring flashed and 3 items were placed in front of Yi Guqin. The first item was a jade box. Yi Guqin opened it and saw that there were 3 elixirs in it. One was as red as blood, one was as blue as crystal, and the last one was as clear as jade. These are Vitality Pills, and Qi Gathering Pills, Yi Guqin said in surprise. Vitality Pills could adjust one's blood qi and provide life essence. Its effects were even more significant than the dragon blood transforming fruit. Vitality Pills could help a martial artist condense their blood qi into essence and break through to the essence realm. The Energy Gathering Pill could help transform the profound qi into genuine qi. It could be said that these 3 pills were all pills that could help a martial artist break through to the next realm. The first 2 kinds of elixirs were not bad. Although they were rare, they were not that rare. However, the Qi Gathering Elixir was much more precious. Many warriors were stuck at the peak of the profound origin realm. The appearance of a Qi Gathering Elixir would make many people jealous. Chen, I see that you've begun to recultivate. These pills should be helpful to you, Xian Su said. Yi Guqin nodded. He was now in the 9th level of the body refining realm. Although the pills were external forces, Yi Guqin wasn't afraid of his cultivation being superficial. With the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, he could cultivate to perfection in any realm. Yi Guqin turned to the second item. It was a spiritual medicine that looked like a ginseng. It was as red as blood and had many roots. This is a supreme-grade spiritual medicine, 100 veins blood ginseng. It is said that the inside of the blood ginseng is filled with veins like a human body. After taking it, not only will it replenish one's blood qi, but it will also help to repair all kinds of damaged meridians. Chen, your sword veins were once destroyed by the people of Starry Sword Pavilion. This should be able to help you recover them, Xian Su said seriously. The value of a supreme-grade spiritual medicine was much higher than that of an upper-grade spiritual medicine. This 100 veins blood ginseng alone was worth 10 dragon blood transforming fruits. Furthermore, it was very difficult to obtain supreme-grade spiritual medicine. Xian Su must have gone through a lot of trouble to find this item. As for the last item, it was a jade slip. This is... Yi Guqin was confused. However, Xian Su's words made Yi Guqin's eyes shrink. This is the first volume of the Universal Sword Codex, Xian Su said. The Universal Sword Codex was the cultivation skill that Yi Guqin had been practicing. It was a spiritual level cultivation skill. However, Xian Su had just told him that he had only been practicing the first volume of the Universal Sword Codex. Then, Yi Guqin understood that the Universal Sword Codex was the cultivation skill that his father had practiced. There were 3 volumes in total. The first volume alone was comparable to a spiritual level cultivation skill. According to Xian Su, the second volume would be comparable to a king-level cultivation skill. The first volume of the Universal Sword Codex is about cultivating the sword veins. Chen, you have cultivated 108 sword veins previously. However, it was destroyed. With the 100 veins blood ginseng, you should be able to recover quickly. However, in order to cultivate the Universal Sword Codex to the top, you need to cultivate 360 sword veins. After cultivating 360 sword veins, you can cultivate the second volume. The second volume of the Universal Sword Codex cultivates the sword heart. The first volume of the Universal Sword Codex cultivated the sword veins while the second volume cultivated the sword heart. The sword veins could increase one's genuine qi and increase the power of the sword qi. As for the sword heart, Xian Su explained that after cultivating the sword heart, one would be able to quickly master all kinds of sword skills. It would also increase one's understanding of the sword essence and sword principle. Yi Guqin sighed. He already had the sword devil talent. If he had the help of the sword heart, his comprehension ability would be terrifying. Chen, don't worry and cultivate. The reason why I am passing the second volume of the Universal Sword Codex to you is that I have to go on a long journey. Xian Su stretched out her hand as if she wanted to touch Yi Guqin's head. After hesitating for a while, she finally put her hand on his head. Yi Guqin felt a chill on the top of his head. Where are you going? Chen, are you worried about me? Xian Su's bright eyes were filled with a faint smile. Of course. Yi Guqin nodded. Xian Su was silent for a long time. Then she sighed. It's your father. I am going to help him. Father, where is he now? Why hasn't he come back since he entrusted me to you since I was young? Yi Guqin asked. He was also curious about his mysterious father. Chinner, it's still too early for you to know all of this. Wait until you're strong enough to stand in front of me and protect me from the wind and rain. At that time, you'll naturally be qualified to know everything, Xian Su pursed her lips and said. Yi Guqin was silent. It was true. Although his talent was unparalleled, his strength was too weak. Xia Yubing had put him in such a difficult situation, let alone his father. Chen, don't think too much. Grow up in the Saint Origin dynasty with peace of mind. Xia Yubing is your first target, followed by Gu Xiaoyang. Gu Xiaoyang is the Mizar of the 7 Great Bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion. He is a 7th grade genius. In addition, he has taken away your innate sword embryo. He is now one of the top geniuses in the Nantian region. When you can defeat him, I will tell you some things. Xian Su said earnestly. All right. Yi Guqin nodded. Xian Su stood up. When it was time to leave, she looked at Yi Guqin with eyes full of reluctance. She had raised Yi Guqin since he was young and watched him grow from a babbling baby to a handsome young man. Xian Su's heart was filled with complicated warm feelings. Then I will leave. Chen, take care. Xian Su's beautiful eyes lingered for a while before she finally turned away. By the way, Aunt, are you sick? Yi Guqin suddenly asked. Xian Su stopped in her tracks. Chapter 20. I noticed that your hands and feet are cold and your entire body is as cold as snow. Plus, your... Yi Guqin wanted to say her appearance, but he concealed it in the end. Xian Su sighed and nodded slightly. I accept your concern, Chen. However, the 7 evils heart-devouring poison in my body is refined from the 7 types of yin energy in the world. It is extremely poisonous and has been a chronic illness for many years. It can only be suppressed, but not eradicated. Yi Guqin was shocked by Xian Su's words. Xian Su had been suffering from a hidden illness for many years. She had used most of her mental energy to suppress the 7 evils heart-devouring poison, but she was still able to display such strength and kill a divine soul expert in one move. If Baiming Spring knew about this, he would definitely die of shame. It seems that my aunt's true strength is beyond my expectations, Yi Guqin thought. Xian Su was going to help his father. It was obvious that it was not an ordinary matter. It would be good if she could increase her strength. Yi Guqin thought for a while and no longer hesitated. He passed the martial arts mental cultivation method from his previous life, the 9 Yin manual and the 9 Yang divine technique to Xian Su. Chen, what kind of cultivation method is this? After completely memorizing these 2 mental cultivation methods, even Xian Su, whose strength was unfathomable, revealed a look of shock in her beautiful eyes. She had never seen or heard of such a cultivation method. To cultivate the 9 Yin manual, one needs the power of extreme yin and extreme coldness. Aunt's 7 evils heart-devouring poison is also extremely cold. Perhaps the 9 Yin manual can alleviate it. As for the 9 Yang divine technique, one can cultivate the power of pure Yang. It should be able to restrain the 7 evils heart-devouring poison. Aunt may not be able to cure the 7 evils heart-devouring poison completely by cultivating these 2 cultivation methods, but it will not be difficult to slowly refine it, Yi Guqin said. These 2 cultivation methods are really strange. They restrain each other and connect with each other. Perhaps they can really cure my 7 evils heart-devouring poison. Chen, you have given me a big surprise. Even Xian Su, who had always been calm and composed, could not hide her excitement. She immediately pulled Yi Guqin into her arms. There was hope for a cure for her chronic illness. Yi Guqin only felt that he had fallen into a soft place, and there was a cold fragrance at the tip of his nose. In his previous life, the sword demon lived a lonely life and did not get close to women. At this moment, he seemed to be at a loss. As if sensing that she had lost her composure, Xian Su hurriedly released her hand. But for some reason, his heart skipped a beat. On the other hand, Yi Guqin's expression did not change. What's wrong with me? Why did I lose my composure? Xian Su was vexed. After that, Xian Su reminded Yi Guqin once more before turning back to look at him with every step she took. In the end, she flicked her sleeve and left. Who knew how long it would be before they could meet again? Although Yi Guqin's real identity was the sword demon, Dugu Wubai, the sword demon, who had always been cold, couldn't remain indifferent to his aunt, who had given her heart to him. These 2 techniques should be of some help to her. Next, it's time to cultivate, Yiguchen said to himself. In order to find out about his father and help them, Yiguchen had to defeat Gu Xiaoyang. Gu Xiaoyang was originally a 7th grade genius of the Starry Sword Pavilion. In addition, he had merged with Yiguchen's innate sword embryo. He had become a top genius in the South Horizon region. The Saint Origin dynasty was just one of the countless dynasties in the South Horizon region. Gu Xiaoyang was still a little far away for Yiguchen now. Now, he had to deal with Xia Yubing. Yiguchen had said that he would definitely get back that sword. After these few days of nourishment, my body has already reached its peak. Next, it's time to break through to the essence realm. Realm had always been Yiguchen's weakness. Most of the time, it was his realm that limited his combat strength. However, with the elixir given by Xian Su, Yiguchen would not need much time to cultivate back to his original realm. He put the 3 items that Xian Su had given him into his origin ring and then headed to the Cloud Valley Mountain. At the bottom of the ice-fire cliff in the Cloud Valley Mountain, the ice-fire yin-yang pool was still steaming with hot and cold qi. In the pool, Yiguchen was half naked, sitting cross-legged in the pool. Last time, Yiguchen had only been at the edge of the ice-fire yin-yang pool and had not completely sunk into it. However, now, Yiguchen was completely soaked in the pool. Although there was still some distance to the eye of the pool, Yiguchen could feel that the power of ice and fire were alternating in his body. It was as if he had repeatedly experienced a hell of fire and ice. The pain was far beyond what an ordinary person could endure. Why is there no reaction? Yiguchen was waiting for the Thunder Calamity sword in his dantian to change like last time. Was I wrong? Was it just a coincidence? Yiguchen thought to himself. However, he could not help but regret it now. Just as Yiguchen's body was about to reach its limit, the Thunder Calamity sword in his dantian finally vibrated again. Wisps of power of thunder burst out and spread all over Yiguchen's tendons and veins. Now, Yiguchen took out a jade box from his origin ring and swallowed the qi and blood elixir. In an instant, his body, which had been in a sorry state because of the power of ice and fire, was suddenly filled with blood. His tendons and veins swelled like dragons, emitting a dull buzzing sound. Yiguchen wanted to use this opportunity to cultivate the muscle-bone strengthening scripture to the advanced level and pass the second minor tribulation of the blood calamity of the physical body at the same time. Boom! As Yiguchen used the various moves of the muscle-bone strengthening scripture, the tendons and bones in his body were constantly emitting crackling sounds, like beans being popped. That was the twisting of his bones and tendons, transforming and being reborn. Boom! Yiguchen's body once again emitted a violent sound, like a muffled thunderclap. In the next moment, there seemed to be a golden light surging on the surface of Yiguchen's body. A vigorous aura was brewing in his body and then suddenly burst out. Muscle-bone strengthening scripture, advanced level. Yiguchen's eyes opened and 2 rays of golden light shot out. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and a force that he had never felt before flowed through his tendons and bones. Vajra Dharma body. It was rumored that after cultivating the muscle-bone strengthening scripture to the advanced level, the body could transform into the Vajra Dharma body. If he cultivated the marrow cleansing scripture to the advanced level in the future and mastered the 2 body refining techniques, he could even cultivate the legendary Vajra Dharma body. In the pugilistic world in his previous life, only the first ancestor, Dharma, who was ranked first among the top 10 unparalleled experts, had cultivated the Vajra Dharma body. In the pugilistic world in his previous life, there was no such strange place as the ice and fire yin-yang pool. Naturally, those who could cultivate it were rare. However, in this world, there were many strange places. There was no lack of dangerous places that could temper the body, just like the ice and fire yin-yang pool. That's it, I'll do it in one go. Yiguchen did not plan to stop. The blood in his body flowed in the opposite direction. He wanted to pass the second minor tribulation of the blood calamity of the physical body. The familiar pain came again, but it was far worse than the first time. This time, not only did the blood flow in the opposite direction, but his body also felt like it was burning. Even his tendons, and bones felt like they were being scalded by magma. The inhuman pain made even Yiguchin grit his teeth. If he had not cultivated the Vajradharma body, it might have been extremely dangerous for him to pass the second minor tribulation. After an unknown period of time, the intense pain had turned into numbness. In addition to the pain of the blood calamity of the physical body, there was also the pain of the ice and fire forces repeatedly torturing his body. Even though he had cultivated the Vajradharma body, Yiguchin's body was still somewhat broken at this moment. There were countless wounds of different sizes. A few days later, Yiguchin, who was bathed in blood, suddenly let out a long howl. The scabs on his wounds fell off, revealing the new snow-white skin inside. However, the degree of flexibility was astonishing. Ordinary spiritual weapons could not cause any harm to Yiguchin. Yiguchin clenched one hand into a fist. The blood in his body surged like the roar of a dragon and the roar of a tiger. When he punched, the blood in his body burst out and vaguely formed the shape of a dragon and elephant. Boom! The mountain walls shook. Gravel rolled down and thick cracks spread in all directions. Fortunately, the surrounding environment had been tempered by the ice and fire yin-yang pool for many years, so it did not collapse. The second minor tribulation has passed. Feeling the power of the dragon and elephant in his body, Yiguchin clenched his fist tightly. Right now, his strength had already exceeded 5,000 jin. The power of the dragon and elephant was so great that even a normal Chi refinement realm grandmaster would not dare to compete with him in terms of strength. Of course, no martial artist would be so stupid as to only rely on strength to fight. It's time to break through to the next realm. Yiguchin was still not satisfied. He wanted to break through to the essence realm again. He took out the essence condensing pill that Xian Su had given him and swallowed it directly. Instantly, Yiguchin felt that the surging blood in his body seemed to be guided and flowed continuously in his tendons and veins. The essence condensing pill intensified the flow of blood in his body. And in this process, the blood in his body seemed to become purer and more condensed. Finally, at a certain moment, a wisp of essence chi was born in his blood. It was like the first sound of heaven and earth. Boom! In an instant, Yiguchin's blood in his body seemed to have a chain reaction. More and more of his blood began to transform into essence chi. At this moment, Yiguchin finally broke through the body refining realm and reached the essence realm. Yiguchin was not surprised by this. Before his cultivation was crippled, he was at the peak of the essence realm. Now that he had such vigorous blood and essence condensing pill, it would be surprising if he still could not break through to the next realm. Moreover, with such vigorous blood and essence chi, Yiguchin had not only broken through to the next realm, but also to the second level of the essence realm. After a while, he broke through to the third level. This kind of increasing speed of breakthrough was unheard of. But Yiguchin did it. With the help of the muscle bone strengthening scripture and the tribulation, his body had a terrifying amount of blood and essence chi. Therefore, he broke through more than one level. This kind of crazy breakthrough did not stop until he reached the fifth level of the essence realm. Feeling the essence chi flowing in his body, he found that it was much purer than blood and essence chi. Now, half of Yiguchin's blood and essence chi had been transformed into essence chi. When all of his blood and essence chi had been transformed into essence chi, he could try to break through to the chi refining realm. Yiguchin also believed that this day was not far away. Chapter 21. Yiguchin had benefited a lot from this closed-door training. He had mastered the body metamorphosis scripture and possessed the Vajra celestial body. His body was extremely tough. He had also passed the second minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body. He possessed the power of dragons and elephants. He had broken through to the fifth level of the essence stage. For the current Yiguchin, a genius like Bei Ling could be killed with a flip of his hand. There was no pressure to speak of. Yiguchin reckoned that even if he were to face Xia Yubing now, even if he was unable to defeat her, he would definitely not end up in a sorry state. Now that my strength has increased greatly, it is time to leave. As for the eye of the ice and fire yin-yang pool, with my current strength, I am still unable to sit in it and cultivate. When I break through to the qi refinement stage, I can try to sit in the eye of the pool. Perhaps I can use it to pass the blood tribulation of the physical body. Yiguchen looked at the center of the ice and fire yin-yang pool. The eye of the pool surged with the extreme power of ice and fire. Its energy was far from what the surrounding water could compare to. With Yiguchen's current strength, even with the suppression of the thunder tribulation sword, the power of ice and fire would instantly cause his body to collapse. Only by using vigorous true qi to protect his body could he endure some of it. However, what made Yiguchen feel slightly regretful was that after absorbing so much power of ice and fire, the blurry words on the thunder tribulation sword still did not appear clearly. Perhaps only the eye of the pool can provide enough energy to completely reveal the words on the thunder tribulation sword. Yiguchen was very interested in the words. Just the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra alone had benefited him greatly. Now that there was another supreme technique that was about to appear, how could Yiguchen not be curious? In addition, Yiguchen did not plan to cultivate the marrow cleansing scripture, 9 Yin scripture, and 9 Yang divine art at the moment. Cultivating in the eye of the ice and fire yin-yang pool was the fastest. Moreover, Yiguchen's strength had increased too much in such a short period of time. If he continued to advance rashly, it would instead cause his realm to become unstable and he would need to settle down for a period of time. Yiguchen also planned to heal the sword vein that he had cultivated from the Universal Sword Codex after a period of time when his realm stabilized. Now that my strength has improved, it's time to go there. Yiguchen's origin ring flashed and a blood-red token appeared in his hand. The word, blood, was engraved on the token. In the Saint Origin dynasty, any warrior would be familiar with this token. This was the blood order of the Blood Listening Tower. The Bloodthirst Tower was a colossus that resided in the shadows of the Saint Origin dynasty. It was an organization made up of killers and assassins. They were the Grim Reaper in the shadows, the messengers from hell. Blood Listening Tower wasn't originally called Blood Listening Tower. It had an elegant name, Snow Listening Tower. However, what the Tingxue house heard was not snow, but blood. In the end, it became known as the Bloodthirsty Tower. It could be said that the Bloodthirst Tower was one of the top forces in the Saint Origin dynasty. Even the imperial family of the Saint Origin dynasty was wary of them. The reason why Yiguchen had the blood order of the Bloodthirst Tower was because an envoy from the Bloodthirst Tower had come to invite Yiguchen to join the Bloodthirst Tower after he had obtained the title of Young Sword Master. However, at that time, Yiguchen was a young man with a righteous heart. How could he join such a dark and bloody organization? In the end, the matter was left unsettled. However, the current Yiguchen was a sword demon. He was interested in everything related to the sword. As for why he wanted to join the Bloodthirst Tower, it was because there was a secret place in the Bloodthirst Tower called the 18 Blood Prison. It was said that one could comprehend the Azura sword intent after passing through the 18 Blood Prison. In this world, there was a saying about sword intent and sword Dao among the sword cultivators. Sword intent was the cornerstone of sword Dao. Comprehending sword intent could be integrated into one's swordsmanship. It could also be combined with cultivation techniques and martial arts of compatible attributes to unleash greater power. It could be said that sword intent was a concept that every sword cultivator wanted to comprehend. As for sword Dao, it could only be comprehended after the sword intent had been condensed to the extreme. Once one comprehended the sword Dao, one would be able to possess all sorts of unbelievable abilities in the sword Dao, and one would even be able to form a sword Dao domain that belonged solely to one. Such might was boundlessly formidable, and it was the supreme pursuit that all sword cultivators yearned for. However, not to mention sword Dao, even sword intent was an existence that was 1 in 10,000 among sword cultivators. The reason why Xia Yubing's reputation was so high was because the North River Sword King, Chu Donglu, was a terrifying expert who had comprehended sword intent. Since Xia Yubing had inherited the North River Sword King's legacy, she naturally had the opportunity to comprehend his sword intent. This was the truly terrifying part. Xia Yubing had once said that if she had used a trace of sword intent, Yi Guqin would definitely not have been able to block it. And now, Yi Guqin was very interested in the sword Dao of this world. In his previous life, Dugu Wubai had comprehended a total of 4 sword Daos. Using the crepe myrtle flexible sword to comprehend the hard and soft sword Dao. Using the black iron heavy sword to comprehend the edgeless sword Dao. Using plants as swords to comprehend the myriad sword Dao. Using no moves to defeat moves to comprehend the selfless sword Dao. Unfortunately, Yi Guqin's current cultivation was too low. He hadn't even reached the divine soul realm. Naturally, he couldn't use these sword Daos for the time being. Moreover, these sword Daos needed to be comprehended anew before he could fully comprehend them. If I can comprehend the Azura sword intent, I will be able to understand the profoundness of this world's sword Dao. It won't be impossible for me to condense the Azura sword Dao in the future. Yi Guqin was a sword maniac. He naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity to comprehend sword intent. Fortunately, the blood token didn't have an expiration date. At any time, as long as he used the blood token as a token to send a message, an envoy from the blood listening tower would come. However, before that, Yi Guqin still had something to do. He still lacked 900 crystal jades to gather the 3,000 crystal jades required for the Calamity Dust Sword. It seems that I still have to stay in the Cloud Valley mountain range for a few days. Yi Guqin lightly smiled. Roar! In a dense forest in the central region of the Cloud Valley mountain range, a scarlet cloud leopard roared and let out a painful wail. On its body, sword marks were smooth and sharp, as if they were carved. They were very delicate. The scarlet cloud leopard was a rank 2 demonic beast. Even an ordinary Essence Realm warrior would die if he faced it. Only those geniuses in the Essence Realm could contend with it. Opposite the scarlet cloud leopard, Yi Guqin stood calmly with the Calamity Dust in his hand. If it was before, this rank 2 demonic beast would have been a big threat to him. But now, Yi Guqin had the Vajra body. Even the sharp claws of the scarlet cloud leopard could only scratch a very shallow wound. It was impossible for it to kill him. I'll use you to train my swordsmanship. Yi Guqin swung his sword again. However, the trajectory of this sword was very mysterious. It didn't target the scarlet cloud leopard. Instead, it resonated with the air in midair. Streaks of transparent ripples spread out like waves. If Bei Dengue was here, he would definitely recognize that this was the Bei family's incomplete spiritual level swordsmanship, vacuum sword wave. 18 layers, 19 layers. As Yi Guqin muttered to himself, the ripples swept toward the scarlet cloud leopard. Although the sword wave didn't have the same lethality as the sword chi, the scarlet cloud leopard's body suddenly stiffened and trembled. The terrifying part of the vacuum sword wave was its vibration power. When the enemy fell into the range of the vacuum sword wave, their internal organs, blood, and veins would all vibrate due to the resonance. The vibrations would become more and more intense as the number of waves increased. In the end, it could even shatter the enemy's internal organs and bones. Moreover, this swordsmanship could ignore most defenses. However, it was also because of this that it was extremely difficult to cultivate the vacuum sword wave. One had to grasp the trajectory of the sword move and the vibration of the void. It was very difficult to adapt. Even for Bei Dengue, it was very difficult to cultivate the vacuum sword wave. If he knew that Yi Guqin had cultivated the vacuum sword wave to 19 layers in such a short period of time, he would definitely be shocked speechless. 20 layers. As Yi Guqin shouted, he used the last sword move. 20 layers. Puff! The scarlet cloud leopard fell to the ground. Its body twitched and viscous blood flowed out of its 7 orifices. Yi Guqin went forward and used his sword to cut open the beast's body and took out its monster core. This was already the 5th rank 2 monster Yi Guqin had killed. I have cultivated the vacuum sword wave to the small success level, but this swordsmanship can only be cultivated to the 30th layer at most. If I want to break through the 30th layer, I have to find the complete swordsmanship. Yi Guqin frowned. The Bei family's swordsmanship wasn't complete. If it was the complete vacuum sword wave, Yi Guqin thought, it would definitely not be weaker than the boundless heaven sword art. This is the 5th rank 2 monster. If I kill a few more, I can get 900 crystal jades and pay off Jia Chen's debt. Yi Guqin thought. He was going to find a few more rank 2 monster beasts. At this moment, in the forest not far away, several monster auras surrounded them. They were all rank 2 monster beasts. Along with the monster auras, there were several figures running away in panic. They were Shanmu, Suya, and several members of the Flaming Red Squad. Acquaintances. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows, but this time he didn't wear a mask. Chapter 22. Damn it! Damn it! The Thunderstorm Squad is so despicable. They led us into a trap, causing a total of 4 rank 2 monster beasts to chase us. Shanmu, who was running away quickly, cursed. Big brother Shanmu, what should we do? We can't get rid of these 4 monster beasts. On the side, a short-haired, delicate girl with a flushed face due to strenuous exercise spoke in a hurried tone. It was Suya. What else can we do? It's dangerous to deal with 1 rank 2 monster beast, let alone 4. Shanmu was also helpless. Several members of the Flaming Red Squad had already died. Roar! Behind them, the monster Chi soared into the sky. A golden ring python suddenly swooped down from the dense canopy, directly biting the upper body of a member of the Flaming Red Squad and swallowing him into its belly. He didn't even have time to scream. Lei Zhan, damn it! Shanmu turned his head and cursed, but his running did not stop at all. On the other side, a dark shadow demon wolf was rushing over, and a 100-legged centipede was moving quickly close to the ground. The rustling sound was frightening. The goal of these 2 monster beasts was Suya. Big brother Shanmu, save me! Suya cried out. With her cultivation, a rank 2 monster beast was enough to tear her to pieces. Suddenly, in the sky in front of Suya, a blood-red giant eagle swooped down like a blood arrow. Its wide blood-red wings cut through the air, making ear-piercing sonic booms. Not good, it's a blood falcon. Shanmu's eyes suddenly froze, but he had no choice. With his strength, he could not stop a blood falcon at full speed. Even if he stepped forward to block it, he would only lose 1 more life. Seeing the blood falcon almost instantly rushing in front of her, Suya could even clearly see the sharp beak of the blood falcon, which was like a blood blade. The next moment, the sharp beak would penetrate her delicate body. Whoosh! Suya closed her eyes and waited for death, but she only felt a sharp airflow passing in front of her. Was she dead? Why didn't she feel any pain? Suya was puzzled and slowly opened her eyes. Then, her eyes froze in an instant. There was a sword in front of him, a simple yet sharp sword. It was covered with lightning runes, and there were weapon veins flickering on the body of the sword. It looked very mysterious. Suya was no stranger to this sword because she had seen someone use it not too long ago. It was the mysterious masked man who had killed Bei Ling. It's actually you. Suya exclaimed in surprise. The young man in front of him had slender eyebrows, handsome eyes, and an indifferent expression. Moreover, Suya felt that this face was somewhat familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. This youth was naturally Yi Guqin. In front of Yi Guqin, the blood falcon, whose wings were 3 meters wide, had its beak cut off by Yi Guqin's sword. Blood flowed out incessantly. At the same time, the demonic black shadow wolf and the 100-legged centipede, the 2 rank 2 demonic beasts, also pounced forward. Get out of my way! Yi Guqin's profound chi vibrated and shook Suya, Shanmu, and the others away. He is the masked man who killed Bei Ling. He has broken through to the profound chi realm in such a short time, and his cultivation level is even higher than mine. Shanmu was in disbelief. This cultivation speed was beyond his imagination. Brother Shanmu, don't you feel that this face is somewhat familiar? Suya was a little confused. Yeah, I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Shanmu frowned and pondered. Just as Suya, Shanmu, and the others retreated to a safe distance, Yiguchin faced the 4 rank 2 demonic beasts alone. The golden ring giant python also surrounded him from behind. 4 rank 2 demonic beasts. Brother Shanmu, should we go and help him? Suya was a little worried. With our strength, we would only be a burden to him if we went up. Shanmu sighed. It had only been a while, but Yiguchin's cultivation level had already left them behind. 4 rank 2 demonic beasts. Just nice to test my current strength. Rank 2 demonic beasts could easily kill an ordinary profound chi realm martial artist. Unless one was a genius in the profound chi realm, one would be severely injured if not killed by a rank 2 demonic beast alone. However, Yiguchin wanted to fight against 4 rank 2 demonic beasts alone. It was crazy. The injured blood falcon was the first to launch an attack. A pair of blood wings spread open. They were as sharp as blades as they slashed towards Yiguchen's head. Yiguchen held the calamity dust sword and poured his profound chi into it, lighting up 18 vessel meridians. For Yiguchen, whose cultivation level had skyrocketed, it was not difficult for him to activate the vessel meridians with all his strength. The calamity dust sword had 26 vessel meridians in total, but 18 vessel meridians were enough. After all, Yiguchen only wanted to test his own strength. He did not want to borrow too much power from the spiritual inscription weapon. Under the amplification of the calamity dust, Yiguchen pointed his sword, which was the most ordinary piercing moon sword technique. An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing came from the sword and the feather. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows. The blood falcon's feather was not weaker than an upper-grade spirit weapon. At the same time, a black shadow, as fast as lightning, attacked Yiguchen from behind. Be careful! Suya suddenly shouted from not far away. Humph! Yiguchen coldly snorted. The sword momentum suddenly changed, vibrating with the void and resonating with it. Transparent ripples spread out in all directions. It was the vacuum sword wave. No matter if it was the blood falcon, shadow demon wolf, 100-legged centipede, or golden ring giant python, after falling into the range of the vacuum sword wave, the beasts' bodies suddenly froze, and their agility slowed down. Yiguchen flipped his hand and used the Aurora sword technique's special skill, Aurora's passing. In an instant, an aurora flashed, and its speed was actually several times faster than the shadow demon wolf. The shadow demon wolf was known for its speed. In terms of speed alone, few ordinary rank 3 demonic beasts could compare. But now, the Aurora sword technique's special skill directly pierced through the shadow demon wolf's head. 10 layered waves. Yiguchen's sword move changed again. 10 layers of transparent sword wave swept out, and the other 3 demonic beasts' bodies shook violently. Then, Yiguchen's eyes flashed, and another 10 layers of sword wave swept out. The most terrifying thing was that this 10 layers of sword wave and the previous 10 layers of sword wave actually overlapped. It was equivalent to 20 layers of sword wave being blasted out in one go. This was the special skill that Yiguchen had comprehended after cultivating the vacuum sword wave to minor accomplishment, overlapping waves. The sword wave was like a tidal wave, stacked together, and instantly exploded with a powerful vibration force. Puff! The bodies of the 3 rank 2 demonic beasts were all blown away by the overlapping wave's sword wave. Under the 20 layers of sword wave, the most fragile 100-legged centipede's carapace was directly shattered, revealing the flesh and blood that had long been eroded by the vibration. The blood falcon was also shaken to the brink of death, barely holding on. As for the golden ring giant python, its body was flexible, so it suffered the least damage, but it was still a little better than the other 2 demonic beasts. Such a terrifying swordsmanship. Shanmu, Suya, and the others were all dumbfounded. If Yiguchen used this swordsmanship against Bei Ling again, they were sure that Bei Ling would definitely not be able to last more than one round. Such a terrifying swordsmanship, I remember who he is. Suddenly, a member of the Flaming Red Squad seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes revealed a deep shock. Who is he? Shanmu and Suya asked hurriedly. The Cloud Valley mountain range was still far from the Milky Way province. In addition, the Xia family and the Bei family tried their best to stop the news from leaking out, so there were not many people who knew about Yi Guqin's deeds in the Xia family. As for killing Bei Ling, there were even fewer people who knew about it. Young Sword Grandmaster, Yi Guqin. As soon as this was said, Shanmu and the others were stunned. The head of the 7 geniuses of the Milky Way province, the Sword Grandmaster who had the talent of a 7th-grade genius, Yi Guqin. I didn't expect the masked little brother to be him. Shanmu sighed. Suya's little mouth was even wider. Thinking about how she had ridiculed Yi Guqin before, she felt a little ashamed. But I've heard that Yi Guqin is a despicable vile character. He sneak-attacked Xia Yubing in the Sword King Mystery Realm and had his cultivation crippled. But now, Shanmu was puzzled. The battle prowess that Yi Guqin had displayed did not resemble that of a cripple at all. I believe that he would not do such a thing. There must be a misunderstanding, Suya said firmly, staring at Yi Guqin with her beautiful eyes. With one sword, he could kill a rank 2 demonic beast and seriously injure 2 rank 2 demonic beasts. Even those geniuses, if they did not break through to the Qi refining realm, would find it difficult to do so. As if feeling the crisis of life and death, the remaining Blood Falcon and Golden Ring Giant Python hissed at the same time, and at the same time, demon aura surged out of their bodies. Oh no, those demonic beasts are going to go all out. Shanmu's eyes were dignified. Oh, the last move. Yi Guqin did not dodge and attacked again. When the sword came out, its trajectory was mysterious and unpredictable, interweaving into a sword net. Every trajectory was perfect, as if it included thousands of things. Boundless Heaven Sword Art. This swordsmanship was passed down to him by his father. Even among the spiritual level swordsmanship, it was the best, so it was very difficult to cultivate. When Yi Guqin performed the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, the Blood Falcon's demon aura burst out. Its blood feathers fell off and turned into a blood blade storm, sweeping toward Yi Guqin. The Golden Ring Giant Python opened its mouth, activated its poison sac with its life essence and blood, and spat out a poisonous breath containing strong poisonous gas. Boom! The collision was earth-shattering. The surrounding trees were broken, stones were thrown into the air, and cracks appeared on the ground. In the smoke and dust, Shanmu and the others looked over. There was only one person and one sword. On the opposite side, the Blood Falcon and the Golden Ring Giant Python had been cut into pieces by the Boundless Heaven Sword Art. It's a pity that the Boundless Heaven Sword Art is only one step away from the basic level. At that time, I can comprehend some special moves. Even grandmasters in the Qi refining realm will not dare to underestimate me. Yi Guqin frowned. He did not expect that it would be so difficult to reach the basic level swordsmanship. But if some sword cultivators knew about it, they would vomit blood in anger. In order to reach the basic level swordsmanship, even the most common inferior level swordsmanship, it would take a few years to reach the basic level. Only extremely talented sword cultivators could do it. The Boundless Heaven Sword Art was a superior level swordsmanship, and it was dozens of times more difficult to comprehend than the inferior level swordsmanship. A genius sword cultivator would probably spend 10 years to comprehend the basic level swordsmanship. And Yi Guqin had only started practicing the Boundless Heaven Sword Art for a month. With such talent in sword principle, all the sword cultivator sects in the 9 regions would fight to recruit Yi Guqin as a disciple. After dealing with the 4 demonic beasts, Yi Guqin also collected some of the valuable body parts. Together with Yi Guqin's previous harvest, it was more than enough to sell for 900 crystal jades. Just as Yi Guqin finished sorting out the spoils, Suya came forward and said nervously with a flushed face, Thank you for saving me, young Master Yi, it's no problem. Yi Guqin waved his hand and did not care. Young Master Yi, I have offended you before. Please forgive me. Suya suddenly bowed to Yiguchin. It's okay. Yiguchin nodded slightly and then used the willow catkin wind to float away. Suya was left behind and looked at the direction where Yiguchin left with a sense of loss. Alas, he is not in the same world as us. In the future, he will climb to a higher place. Shanmu patted Suya's shoulder and sighed. Suya suddenly felt an indescribable sense of anxiety. Chapter 23. After Yiguchin returned to Merchant River City, the first thing he did was to head to the underground market and sell the cores of many rank 2 monsters as well as some valuable body parts. He obtained over 1,200 crystal jades. Apart from the 900 crystal jades he used to pay off his debt, he still had 300 crystal jades left. He really couldn't be called wealthy. While selling his goods, Yiguchin also heard some news. After Xia Yubing, the second of the 7 prodigies of the Milky Way province, Song Daozhen, had also broken through to the Qi refining realm and had a match with Xia Yubing. Originally, everyone thought it would be a fierce battle, but the result was shocking. Song Daozhen had suffered a crushing defeat. It was practically a one-sided defeat. From the mouths of some cultivators who had watched the battle, Yiguchin learned that at the beginning, Xia Yubing and Song Daozhen had been exchanging blows, countering each other's attacks. In the middle of the battle, Song Daozhen had actually used a spirit-level sword art, and it was no weaker than Xia Yubing's glacier sword art. But afterwards, when Xia Yubing unleashed her sword intent, it was a crushing defeat. Within 3 moves, Song Daozhen vomited blood and fell to the ground. It was also this battle that allowed Xia Yubing to solidify her position as the top prodigy of the Milky Way province. After the battle, she had declared that if Yiguchin dared to appear in the 10 prefectures elite gathering half a year later, she would kill him with a single strike. Yiguchin had been cultivating in the Cloud Valley mountain all this time, so he naturally hadn't shown himself. As a result, it was rumored that Yiguchin had long since hidden himself in some corner. Unleash my sword intent and defeat Song Daozhen in 3 moves, Yiguchin muttered, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. He was even more interested in this world's sword intent and way of the sword. I wonder if the 4 ways of the sword I comprehended in my previous life are more powerful, or if the way of the sword of this world is more powerful. Yiguchin was weighing, and at the same time needed a reference. The Shura sword intent in the Bloodthirsty Tower was the best reference. Looks like I have to join the Bloodthirsty Tower and obtain a chance to enter the 18 prison of blood. I wonder if the Shura sword intent or Xia Yubing's sword intent is more powerful. Yiguchin was very curious. There would be a battle between him and Xia Yubing in the end, and this battle was clearly not too far away. Yiguchin knew that the 10 prefectures elite meeting was a competition between the geniuses of the 10 prefectures of the Saint Origin dynasty. Previously, Yiguchin was the leader of the prodigies, but that was only limited to the Milky Way prefecture. As for the Saint Origin dynasty, the 10 great prefectures were extremely vast. There were countless geniuses and experts vying for supremacy. Even though Xia Yubing had inherited the sword intent of the North River Sword King and was extremely talented, she might not be able to suppress all the geniuses of the 10 prefectures. The purpose of the 10 prefectures elite meeting was to allow the various major powers, sects, and institutions of the Saint Origin dynasty to select their disciples. The geniuses of each of the 10 prefectures would do their best to fight in order to win the favor of the major forces and obtain better cultivation resources. The 10 prefectures elite gathering. Only those who have reached the Qi refining stage are qualified to participate. There's still half a year's time. With my abilities, it shouldn't be difficult. Yiguchin was also very interested in the 10 prefectures elite gathering. He was originally a martial arts fanatic and liked to compete with others to hone his swordsmanship. The 10 prefectures elite meeting was undoubtedly the best opportunity. However, there was still half a year's time before the 10 prefectures elite meeting, so Yiguchin wasn't in a hurry. With enough crystal jades, Yiguchin directly headed to the Heavenly Forging Pavilion. At the entrance of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, Yiguchin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Ouch! An old and hoarse voice sounded. In the next moment, an old man who reeked of alcohol rolled out of the heavenly forging pavilion like a rolling gourd. Two brawny men crossed their arms and looked at the old man with disgust. There was also a beautiful maid who covered her nose and said in disgust, "Where did this old drunkard come from? How dare he come to my heavenly forging pavilion and act stupid? I beg you, old man. I'll sell this hammer to you in exchange for some crystal jades to buy me some wine." The old man's hair was white and he reeked of alcohol. His dry and rough hands held a pitch-black hammer. "Humph, you dare to ask for 10,000 crystal jades for a broken hammer? Why don't you go and rob it?" This maid was the one who received Yiguchin last time. "Ah. I feel uncomfortable without wine." The old drunkard rolled on the ground. The sharp-eyed Yiguchin noticed that the old man's hands seemed to be disabled and were not very nimble. Although the sword demon's temperament was indifferent, this kind of small matter was just a small matter. He walked up to the old drunkard and put down 10 crystal jades. "I can't buy good wine, but I can still buy a few dozen jars of ordinary strong wine," Yiguchin casually said. "Why do you care about this old drunkard, he?" The maid wanted to say something, but her throat seemed to be choked by someone. After a long while, she said, "Yiguchin, no, young Master Yi, you're here." The maid immediately put on a fawning smile. Last time, after knowing Yiguchin's identity, she still hated and despised Yiguchin. But now, she heard that Yiguchin seemed to have started to cultivate again. Moreover, he did not die after receiving Xia Yubing's sword. He also had an abnormally strong aunt who killed the Bei family's divine soul stage elder with a single finger. Moreover, because of their fear of Xian Su, the Bei family could only swallow their anger and not make any big moves. Naturally, they did not know that Xian Su had already left. After hearing all these things, the maid's attitude towards Yiguchin changed completely. Yiguchin did not care much about this. As for the old drunkard, he only glanced at Yiguchin after receiving the 10 pieces of crystal jades. Then, he left happily to drink. Yiguchin did not ask for anything in return. It was just 10 crystal jades. After entering the heavenly forging pavilion, Chu Nanchun actually personally came to welcome him. When Yiguchin handed over the 3,000 crystal jades, Chu Nanchun even tactfully declined. Yiguchin secretly shook his head. As expected, strength was status. Having an aunt who could casually kill a divine soul stage cultivator, Yiguchin also received the respect of others. This was the benefit of strength. However, Yiguchin never liked to owe others, so he still handed the 3,000 crystal jades to Chu Nanchun. "Little friend Yi, there is less than a month left until the Battle of the Mine. Miss is looking for other candidates during this time, just in case. After all, I heard that Bei Dangue and Wang Cheng have already broken through to the qi refining stage. Of course, little friend Yi is still very strong," Chu Nanchun said kindly. Of course, this was only Chu Nanchun's compliment. For Yiguchin to be able to receive Xia Yubing's sword, his strength was indeed not to be underestimated. However, in Chu Nanchun's eyes, he was still a bit lacking compared to those geniuses who had broken through to the qi refining stage. "I will definitely attend the appointment on time. The agreement will remain the same. If I am unable to win, I will return the Calamity Earth sword and pay the 5,000 crystal jades." Yiguchin's tone was indifferent, but it was as if victory was already in his grasp. Chu Nanchun secretly sighed at Yiguchin's overestimation of his own abilities, but on the surface, he was still smiling. After leaving the heavenly forging pavilion, Yiguchin arrived outside a shabby house in Shang River City. Yiguchin knocked on the door, but no one answered. He casually pushed open the door and a bleak aura rushed over. The courtyard was filled with withered leaves, and an old servant was sweeping the withered leaves with a broom. "Old man, where is your master?" Yiguchin asked. "Master? I don't know where he went." The old servant shook his head and continued sweeping the leaves. "Is that so? Then do you recognize this item?" Yiguchin took out the Blood Listening Tower's blood token. The old servant was somewhat puzzled. He opened his dim old eyes and said, "I don't recognize this item." "Oh, is that so?" The dignified Blood Listening Tower's Vice Tower Lord actually doesn't recognize the Blood Listening Tower's blood token? Yiguchin's tone was playful. This old man does not know what young master is talking about. The old servant shook his head. In the next moment, Yiguchin attacked with his sword. As the sword tip vibrated, 20 layers of sword wave overlapped and spread out with a loud bang. Vacuum Sword Wave's special skill, Overlapping Waves. A transparent sword wave rippled out and spread throughout the entire house, shaking countless withered leaves. As the withered leaves fluttered in the air, the old servant still stood there calmly. Then, a gust of wind blew over, and the withered leaves that filled the sky turned into fine powder at the same time, drifting away with the wind without leaving a trace. As for the old servant who was also within the range of the vacuum sword wave, not even the corner of his clothes was blown away. The old servant threw down the broom and clapped his hands. As expected of the former young sword master Yiguchin. Your grasp and control of swordsmanship has left me in awe. I did not resist at all, but the sword wave did not even touch me. The old servant sighed. The withered leaves around him were all pulverized. Only the old servant did not have a trace of power. This meant that Yiguchin's control of swordsmanship had reached a fine and precise level. It's just a small trick. How could it catch the Vice Tower Lord's eye? Yiguchin cupped his hands slightly. The inconspicuous old servant in front of him was the Vice Tower Lord of Blood Listening Tower, the Broken Sword Elder. He was an expert with unfathomable strength. The reason why Yiguchin knew that the Broken Sword Elder was here was because the Blood Listening Tower's envoy had told him that the Broken Sword Elder admired him greatly and wanted to invite him to join Blood Listening Tower and become his disciple. Yiguchin, I originally wanted you to join Blood Listening Tower, but you ignored me. Now that you've come, the sword vein has been destroyed, and the innate sword embryo has been taken away. I originally wanted to ignore you, but the swordsmanship you displayed just now made me hesitate. The Broken Sword Elder sighed. It's my honor to receive the Vice Tower Lord's favor. However, the reason I want to join Blood Listening Tower is for the Azura sword intent. Yiguchin was very straightforward and did not hide anything. Ha, the Azura sword intent. The Broken Sword Elder laughed loudly as if he had heard something funny. Why is the Vice Tower Lord laughing? Yiguchin frowned. I'm laughing at you for being too naive. There are quite a few people who joined my Blood Listening Tower because of the Azura sword intent. However, there is not a single person who has managed to pass through the 18 blood prison other than the tower head. The crippled sword elder shook his head. Is it really that difficult? Yiguchin raised his eyebrows slightly. The Blood Listening Tower Lord could be described as extremely mysterious. Very few people had seen his true appearance. They did not even know his name or gender. The 18 blood prisons are filled with tests. Cultivation is only one aspect. The most difficult test is the soul and will. If one's will is not firm enough, not only will they not be able to comprehend the Azura sword intent, they will even suffer a backlash and become a madman who only knows how to kill. The Broken Sword Elder sneered. You won't know until you try. Yiguchin was not afraid at all. There's only one way to join Blood Listening Tower, and that's to defeat her. The Broken Sword Elder pointed behind Yiguchin. A blood-red dagger silently stabbed towards the back of Yiguchin's neck. Chapter 24. The attack was stealthy, sharp, and extremely fast. It was like a venomous snake hiding in the dark, killing with one strike. If it was an ordinary warrior in the Essence Realm, he would not have been able to react in time and would have been killed instantly. However, Yiguchin was different. His true identity was the invincible sword demon. He was more familiar with swords than he was with himself. Ordinary warriors would not have noticed the subtle sound of the sword cutting through the wind. However, Yiguchin's ears were sharp enough to catch it. This was completely due to Yiguchin's familiarity with swords. Clang! Yiguchin used the willow catkin wind body technique. His body swayed like a willow tree. At the same time, the 18 vessel meridians on his tribulation dust lit up to increase his strength. A sword radiance was as fast as lightning and collided with the fatal attack. The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing was heard. Yiguchin felt a surge of vital energy vibrating along the edge of the sword. Chi Refinement Grandmaster. It was obvious that the attacker was a Chi Refinement Grandmaster. However, Yiguchin had the King Kong's celestial body and the support of the Dracophant force. Even if he faced an ordinary warrior in the Chi Refinement realm, he would still be able to fight. As the two swords collided, Yiguchin and the attacker retreated at the same time. He actually managed to block this attack. A voice that was clearly filled with astonishment rang out. However, what surprised Yiguchin was that the voice belonged to a cold female voice. A female assassin? Yiguchin squinted his eyes and looked at the sword. It was a young girl in black. Her delicate body was wrapped tightly in the dark night clothes, outlining her graceful curves. She held a jade sword that glowed with blood in her hand. Half of her face was covered by a black mask, revealing only a pair of cold eyes. She stared coldly at Yiguchin. There was a hint of seriousness in her eyes. He actually blocked Nightingale's attack with his Essence Realm cultivation. Although Nightingale only broke through to the Chi Refinement realm a few days ago, she used the traceless swordsmanship that I taught her. Even the crippled sword elder, who had always been calm and indifferent, stared at Yiguchin with his pair of old, dim eyes. He had thought that Yiguchin's sword vein had been destroyed and he had lost the congenital sword embryo. Yiguchin's cultivation had dropped and he would become a complete loser. Even if he were to recultivate, he would not be able to reach the same level as before. However, Yiguchin's strength far exceeded his expectations. It was simply unbelievable that someone at the 5th level of the Chi Refinement realm could fight. On the other hand, Yiguchin raised his eyebrows when he heard Nightingale's name. Nightingale of Tingxue Tower, ranked 37th on the Heaven Pride list, asked Yiguchin. Nightingale remained silent, which could be considered as an answer. The heavens 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 is heavens 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 heaven. The heavens to heavens heavens is heavens is. Before Yiguchin was crippled, he was ranked 5th on the St. Yuan Heaven's Pride ranking. Perhaps his cultivation level was not at the peak at that time, but he was a grade 7 Heaven's Pride and possessed the innate sword embryo. Coupled with his sword vein, his future potential was limitless. However, after Yiguchin was crippled, his name was no longer on the St. Yuan Heaven's Pride ranking. Xia Yubing took his place. Although she was only a grade 5 Heaven's Pride, she had inherited the North River Sword King's inheritance, comprehended sword intent, and defeated Song Daozhen to take the 5th place on the Sheng Yuan Heaven's Pride list. It could be said that the St. Yuan Heaven's Pride ranking was the most eye-catching existence in the entire St. Origin Empire. Although Nightingale's ranking on the St. Yuan Heaven's Pride list wasn't very high, the St. Origin Empire was vast and her name was enough to prove her talent and strength. Yiguchin, you've displayed enough strength. You're only at the Chi Refinement realm. You're qualified to be an Iron Mask Assassin in the Blood Listening Tower. A Silver Mask Assassin is a Divine Spirit Realm expert. A Gold Mask Assassin is an expert who has broken through the 4th stage of the Mortal Evolution realm. Although you haven't reached the Chi Refinement realm, your battle strength is no weaker than a Chi Refinement realm expert. You're qualified to be an Iron Mask Assassin, said the broken sword old man. Thank you, Deputy Housemaster. Yiguchin cupped his hands together. Also, I want to ask if you're still willing to become my disciple. The broken sword elder was truly interested in Yiguchin. A young man who had experienced such a setback was able to rise up again. Even a cold-blooded and heartless killer like him couldn't help but feel a sense of appreciation for this talent. Nightingale's eyes narrowed when she heard the broken sword old man's words. Although she was the broken sword old man's disciple, she had only succeeded after going through countless trials. Now, the broken sword old man had actually taken the initiative to ask Yiguchin to become his disciple. This comparison made Nightingale somewhat gloomy. Even her gaze towards Yiguchin turned colder. Although the broken sword old man was the deputy house master of the blood listening tower, his strength was undeniable. He was definitely one of the top existences in the Saint Origin Empire. Even some heaven's prides would be more than willing to accept such an expert as his disciple. However, Yiguchin only smiled and cupped his hands together. "Thank you, Deputy House Master. Unfortunately, I'm not fated to be your disciple." This was a tactful rejection. As the sword demon, Yiguchin naturally had the cold and arrogant demeanor of a sword demon. Although his cultivation was at the bottom of this world, Yiguchin was confident that not many people were qualified to be his master when it came to the sword. Even if the broken sword old man's cultivation was much higher than his, it wouldn't be enough. What an arrogant brat. The broken sword old man snorted coldly as an inexplicable light surged in his eyes. Yiguchin was keenly aware of this emotion. Killing intent. The broken sword old man actually wanted to kill him. Humph. Nightingale also snorted coldly as she looked at Yiguchin as though he was a dead man. Although the broken sword old man looked like an old servant, he was the deputy house master of the blood listening tower. Killing someone was more natural to him than eating or drinking. However, just as the broken sword old man narrowed his eyes as though he was about to make a move, the sound of a flute could be heard. The sound of the flute was bitter and sorrowful. It was as though a beautiful woman had her heart broken and was thinner than a yellow flower. This flute sound. Yiguchin took a deep breath as shock appeared in his eyes for the first time. Sword intent. The sound of the flute actually contained a trace of sword intent. After all, how difficult was it to carry sword insight with a strand of the flute? Only a true expert in the sword Tao that had comprehended sword insight to the acme of perfection was capable of casually placing sword insight on everything in the world. In his previous life, the sword demon Dugu Wubai had reached this level. He could place sword intent on plants and was sharper than a divine sword. He had defeated all the sword principle experts in the world. Expert. The person playing the flute was a true sword principle expert. Yiguchin could not help but want to find the source of the flute sound. However, the sound of the flute seemed to have come from beyond the heavens. He could not find the source at all. Not only is he an expert in the sword principle, but his cultivation level is also extremely high. Yiguchin sighed. After being in this world for so long, it was the first time that someone in the sword principle had reached the level of sword intent that he had in his previous life. House Master. When the sound of the flute sounded, the crippled sword elder, who was filled with killing intent earlier, instantly knelt on the ground like a frosted eggplant. The infamous deputy house master of the Bloodthirst Tower in the Saint Origin dynasty, an expert of his generation, was trembling as he knelt on the ground. He was like a mouse that had encountered a lion. It's the house master of the Bloodthirst Tower. Yiguchin was surprised and then relieved. The house master of the Bloodthirst Tower was extremely mysterious. No one had seen his true appearance and no one knew his cultivation level. However, what puzzled Yiguchin was why the crippled sword elder was so afraid of the house master of the Bloodthirst Tower. Logically speaking, although the deputy house master's status was not as high as the house master's, he was definitely not a servant. However, Yiguchin could not figure it out for the time being. After a while, the sound of the flute dissipated as if it had never sounded. The withered leaves in the courtyard turned into dust at that moment. The crippled sword elder stood up and exhaled with lingering fear. He looked at Yiguchin without a trace of killing intent. Instead, he looked a little complicated. Yiguchin, you are very lucky to have been recognized by the house master. From now on, you are an assassin of the Bloodthirst Tower. Everyone in the Bloodthirst Tower has a nickname. What is your nickname? Nickname? Yiguchin muttered. Let's call you Sword Demon. Chapter 25. Han Yen House was the most prosperous and famous brothel in Shang River City. At night, the moon hung high in the sky and the night breeze was chilly. A young master dressed in luxurious clothing walked out of Han Yen residence, drunk and dispirited. He was Sun Shijin, the genius of the Sun family. The Sun family was second only to the 5 great families in the Sky River province. Sun Shijin was a genius at the 9th level of the Essence realm and was close to breaking through to the Qi refinement realm. When he passed by the corner of an alley, a gust of cold wind blew and made Sun Shijin shiver. "It's so cold." Sun Shijin shrank back. In the next moment, Sun Shijin's body froze and his eyes widened. "No, I'm an expert at the 9th level of the Essence realm. I'm immune to both heat and cold. How can I feel cold?" Swoosh! A dark sword shadow flashed. It wasn't as bright as the sword radiance, but it was definitely fatal. Sun Shijin, who was at the 9th level of the Essence realm, had just reacted when his head flew into the air. In the last moments of his consciousness, he saw a sword glowing with blood-red light, as well as a black figure wearing a blood-red mask. It's Blood Listening Tower. Sword Demon. Sun Shijin's head rolled to the ground, unable to make a sound. 32. The figure with the bloody mask murmured. The person under the mask was Ye Guqin. Compared to before, Ye Guqin now had a more sinister and cold aura around him. After joining Blood Listening Tower more than 10 days ago, he received the necessities of all assassins. Black clothes, a mask, a superb spirit weapon, the flying guillotine, and a Xiantian sword art, the shadow sword art. With Ye Guqin's strength, he should only be able to wear the iron mask. However, the broken sword elder gave Ye Guqin a very special bloody mask. The shape of the mask was quite ferocious, like a demon from hell. This was in line with his nickname, Sword Demon. The broken sword elder once said that the mask was given to him by the Lord of Blood Listening Tower. As for Ye Guqin, he became the only blood mask assassin in the Bloodthirst Tower apart from Iron Mask, Silver Mask, and Gold Mask. After killing Sun Shijin, Ye Guqin quietly arrived at a remote courtyard. This was the stronghold of Bloodthirst Tower in Shanghai City. As an assassin organization, the Bloodthirst Tower naturally didn't have a fixed base. Instead, they had strongholds in the 10 prefectures, which made it convenient for them to hand over missions and provide information. After entering the courtyard, Ye Guqin walked into the entrance hall and entered the side hall. He pressed a secret switch on the wall and entered a tunnel. After passing through several layers of formations, he arrived at an underground space. This was a spacious stone room, and there were many figures walking back and forth. These people were all dressed up as assassins of Bloodthirst Tower. At the end of the stone room, there were many jade slips. Each jade slip represented a new mission. According to the difficulty of the mission, the jade slips were divided into white, yellow, and red. White jade slips were for ordinary Iron Mask assassins, yellow for Silver Mask assassins, and red for Gold Mask assassins. Above the red jade slips were the blood-colored jade slips. Those were the most dangerous missions. Usually, many Gold Mask assassins would take the lead, and many Silver Mask assassins and Iron Mask assassins would complete the mission together. Of course, blood-colored jade slips hadn't appeared for a long time. Red jade slips were also very rare. Most of them were white jade slips, and there were only a few yellow ones. Ye Guqin came to this stronghold to hand over his mission. With Ye Guqin's arrival, his eye-catching blood-colored mask immediately attracted the attention of many assassins. It's Sword Demon. He's back after completing his mission. What a crazy guy. He's only been in the Bloodthirst Tower for a few days, but he's already completed 32 missions and stirred up a storm. His fame shouldn't be any less than Nightingale's. I think he's here for the 18 blood prisons. Only by filling the blood guillotine with blood can he get the chance to enter the 18 blood prisons. That's the 18 blood prisons. Unfortunately, with my ability, I don't know how long it'll take to fill the blood guillotine. Some of the surrounding assassins were discussing, but Ye Guqin didn't care at all. After joining the Bloodthirst Tower, Ye Guqin learned that the only requirement to enter the 18 blood prisons was to fill the blood guillotine to the brim. Yi Guqin studied the blood guillotine. It was made of a strange jade that could absorb a trace of the heart's blood essence. Every time the blood guillotine killed someone, it would absorb a trace of the heart's blood essence. If he wanted to enter the 18 blood prisons, he had to fill the blood guillotine completely with this blood essence. Right now, in Yi Guqin's flying guillotine, the 32 strands of essence and blood only occupied a small space inside the flying guillotine. It would take a long time for it to become a blood sword. Half a year. I must comprehend the Shura sword intent in half a year. Yi Guqin's eyes seemed to be stained with scarlet under the blood guillotine. He had to comprehend the Shura sword intent, and he had to bear the price. I'll take all of these missions. Yi Guqin stepped forward. The missions were distributed by a silver-masked assassin. Seeing Yi Guqin take another mission, the silver-masked assassin was secretly amazed. Although the missions were all white jade slips, it didn't mean that they could be completed easily. Yi Guqin's true cultivation was only at the 5th level of the essence realm, but he was already taking missions for the qi refining realm. An ordinary essence realm cultivator wouldn't even be qualified to take a mission. This sword demon is a madman. I really don't know who he is. The surrounding assassins sighed when they saw Yi Guqin take several more missions. They also didn't know the true identity of the sword demon. Apart from the Tower Master and Deputy Tower Master, only the 4 judges knew the identities of all the assassins in the blood listening tower. After taking the missions, Yi Guqin left again. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, the legend of the blood listening tower's sword demon spread throughout the entire Shang River city. After all, he had killed so many people in such a short period of time without failing once. In addition, he wore a blood-colored mask that was different from ordinary blood-listening tower assassins. The title of Sword Demon hung over the Shang River city like a shadow. At this moment, Yi Guqin didn't take any more missions after handing in the missions. Instead, he returned to the small bamboo house outside the Shang River city where Xian Su occasionally stayed. She had been gone for a long time, but there was still a faint fragrance in the house. Yi Guqin didn't have any other thoughts. He took out the supreme grade 100 veins blood ginseng. The 100 veins blood ginseng was as red as snow. Its dense roots were as complicated as the veins of a human body. Soon, he would have to fulfill his promise to help Chu Shiqing seize the crystal jade mine. At that time, he would have to face the geniuses of the Bei family and the Wang family. Yi Guqin reckoned that it was very likely that he would have to face Bei Dengue or Wang Cheng. Both of them were among the 7 geniuses of the Sky River province. Although they were far inferior to Xia Yubing, they were still incomparable to ordinary geniuses. Yi Guqin was confident in himself, but it was always good to have more bargaining chips. Moreover, Yi Guqin was also very interested in the Universal Sword Codex. This was because this skill was almost entirely created for swordsmanship. The Myriad Sword Codex and the Boundless Heaven Sword Art. All of this made Yi Guqin a little more curious about his father that he had never met. This was because these sword techniques were definitely not something that ordinary forces could possess. Moreover, Yi Guqin was almost certain that his father and he came from a sword cultivation force that specialized in sword cultivation. And this force was definitely not small. However, this was not what Yi Guqin needed to consider now. He swallowed the 100 meridians blood ginseng and felt a strange medicinal power flowing through his veins. There was no need to say much about ordinary veins, but when the medicinal power came into contact with the almost completely broken sword vein, it slowly seeped in. Yi Guqin immediately felt his entire body warm up, as if a piece of ice was gradually melting into warm water in his body. This was a sign that the withered and broken sword vein was slowly recovering. At the same time, Yi Guqin once again used the Myriad Sword Codex to help the sword vein recover. Although there was the assistance of a top-grade spiritual medicine like the 100 Meridians blood ginseng, it was obvious that the sword vein's recovery could not be completed in a day or two. As time passed, the arranged battle between the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, the Bei family, and the Wang family finally arrived. At this moment, Outside the heavenly forging pavilion, Chu Shiqing and Chu Nanchun, who were dressed in light green clothes, were already preparing. Beside her stood a man and a woman. The man was dressed in white and had a handsome appearance. With his hands behind his back, he had the aura of a proud son of heaven. The other girl had a noble temperament and a snow-white neck like a proud phoenix. If Yi Guqin was here, he would definitely not be unfamiliar with her. This girl was Princess Yuanyang. Young Master Murong, Princess Yuanyang, I'll have to trouble the two of you this time. If you succeed, my heavenly forging pavilion will definitely not treat the two of you unfairly. Chu Shiqing said gently. Miss Chu, don't worry. I, Murong Ming, will definitely help the heavenly forging pavilion. Although the Bei family and the Wang family are not bad, my Murong family is not afraid. The man named Murong Ming's tone carried a faint arrogance, as if he did not care at all. When he said this, he faintly glanced at Princess Yuanyang from the corner of his eyes. The Murong family was a great family in the Beichen mansion. Unlike the 5 great families in the Milky Way province, the Beichen mansion only had 2 great families, the Murong family and the Situ family. If compared to a single family, regardless of whether it was the Murong family or the Situ family, their strength would definitely suppress any one of the 5 great families. In the 5 great families, Xiantian sword techniques were already considered core martial arts, and spirit-level sword techniques were even rarer. However, the 2 great families did not lack Xiantian sword techniques. Instead, they used spirit-level sword techniques as their core martial arts. From this, it could be seen that the 2 great families' strength surpassed the 5 great families in the Milky Way province. It was no wonder that Murong Ming had such an indifferent attitude. Moreover, Murong Ming was also one of the geniuses in the Beichen mansion. His strength was not weaker than Bei Dangue and the others. As for Princess Yuanyang, she also slightly nodded and said, of course. Uncle once helped me forge the Scarlet Phoenix sword. This small favor should naturally be helped. Then I'll thank the two of you first. Chu Shiqing nodded and smiled. These 2 people were the backup plan that Chu Shiqing had left behind. Naturally, she would not place all her hopes on Yi Guqin. Miss, Yi Guqin still hasn't arrived. Should we set off? On the side, Chu Nanchun opened his mouth and said. Chu Shiqing frowned slightly. Hearing this name, Princess Yuanyang's beautiful red phoenix eyes twitched. Yi Guqin is actually coming. Chapter 26. Facing Princess Yuanyang's question, Chu Shiqing didn't comment. She also vaguely knew about Princess Yuanyang and Yi Guqin's deeds. Princess Yuanyang once watched the battle for the title of Young Sword Master. In that battle, Yi Guqin's sword was like a startled swan as he single-handedly defeated the 5 great sword geniuses one by one. That youth's demeanor was deeply engraved in Princess Yuanyang's heart. After that, Princess Yuanyang, who had a spoiled personality, took the initiative to pursue Yi Guqin. But at that time, Yi Guqin and Xia Yubing were a couple, so he could only tactfully refuse Princess Yuanyang's pursuit. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Over time, Princess Yuanyang's love turned to hate, so she said that she wanted Yi Guqin to be her sword attendant. Princess Yuanyang, the current Yi Guqin is not the same as before. He has already started to recultivate, and his cultivation is not bad. He blocked Xia Yubing's sword. Chu Shiqing said. Yi Guqin. I have also heard of him. He's just a fallen genius. Before Princess Yuanyang could say anything, Murong Ming sneered and said. He could feel that Princess Yuanyang cared a lot about Yi Guqin, so he felt a little sour in his heart. Murong Ming was very interested in Princess Yuanyang. After all, Princess Yuanyang's identity was extraordinary. She was the daughter of a mansion's master. If he could establish a relationship with her, Murong family's power would rise to another level. Yi Guqin, is he still coming? Princess Yuanyang was a little uninterested. If Yi Guqin came, she wouldn't mind taking him in as a sword attendant on the spot. He probably knows that he's not strong enough, so he doesn't dare to come. Murong Ming didn't shy away from sarcasm. We can't waste time. Let's go first. With the two of you here, victory shouldn't be a problem. Chu Shiqing waved her hand. She knew a little about Yi Guqin's character. Yi Guqin definitely wouldn't miss the appointment. Taking a step back, even if Yi Guqin knew that he was not strong enough, he would still fulfill his promise and return the Calamity Dust Sword. The area around the Cloud Valley mountain range was filled with undulating mountain ridges. It was a desolate and barren land. Even the traces of demon beasts were rarely seen. It was practically a land devoid of life. In this region, there was a horseshoe-shaped valley. In this valley, 3 groups of people were facing each other. One of them was the Bei family and the Wang family. The 2 families stood on the same side, obviously choosing to join hands to fight against the Heavenly Forging Pavilion. After all, the Heavenly Forging Pavilion's foundation was not weak, and if it was any other family, it would be difficult for them to swallow this crystal jade load alone. The other force was naturally the Heavenly Forging Pavilion. Not long after, a group of people arrived at Horse Hoof Valley. The ones in the lead were Chu Shiqing's group. Miss. Someone from the Heavenly Forging Pavilion had already stepped forward to receive her. Chu Shiqing nodded slightly and looked to the other side. A few young figures from the Bei clan and Wang clan came into view. 2 of them were the most eye-catching. One of them was a youth dressed in brocade robes with a long sword at his waist. He had an extraordinary aura. The other was a man in black robes with a long spear on his back. He was like a heavy iron tower. Bei clan, Bei Dengue. Wang clan, Wang Cheng. The 2 of them were among the 7 geniuses of the Tianhe province and were ranked in front of Chu Shiqing. Chu Shiqing mainly focused on forging weapons and was not good at fighting. Hence, she was ranked last. Are those the geniuses of the Tianhe province? They are still passable. Murong Ming glanced at them indifferently, as if he was rather disdainful. Miss Chu, I'm sure you have already decided on your candidate. Let's begin. An elder from the Bei clan stepped forward and spoke. He was the leader of the Bei clan this time and was also a divine soul realm expert. The dispute over the crystal jade lode has been going on for a long time. There should be a conclusion. On the other side, the elder from the Wang clan also spoke. Then let me take the first battle. A youth walked out from the Wang clan. It was not Wang Cheng, but Wang Zhan, who had once fought for the dragon blood transformation fruit. On Chu Shiqing's side, Princess Yuanyang strode forward with her beautiful legs. She held the crimson phoenix sword tightly in her jade hand and said, Wang Zhan, you've also broken through to the qi refining realm. Let's compete. As the crisp words fell, Princess Yuanyang's delicate body also exploded with a strong aura. Her vital energy surged and she was also in the qi cultivation realm. Without any superfluous words, Wang Zhan and Princess Yuanyang fought fiercely. On the other hand, Chu Shiqing looked very relaxed. She knew the strength of Princess Yuanyang and Murong Ming. If they won these 2 battles, even if Yi Guqin did not come, the Heavenly Forging Pavilion would still be able to obtain the crystal jade lode. As expected, when the battle reached its climax, Wang Zhan used a secret technique that temporarily raised his strength to the 2nd cycle of the qi cultivation realm. However, Princess Yuanyang also used a secret technique and a sword move that was close to the spirit level to defeat Wang Zhan. After the battle, Princess Yuanyang was slightly out of breath. Her snow-white face was a little red, but there was still some arrogance in her red phoenix eyes. Wang Zhan's face was a little ugly. The elders of the Bei and Wang clans also snorted heavily. However, the North Angelica and Wang Cheng's faces did not change much. The 2nd battle will be up to young Master Murong. Seeing that Princess Yuanyang had won the first battle, Chu Shiqing also smiled and turned to Murong Ming. Miss Chu, you can rest assured. Murong Ming smiled and nodded. He was quite calm. He glanced at Princess Yuanyang from the corner of his eyes. He wanted to win this battle cleanly. Make your move. Otherwise, you won't even have the slightest chance. Murong Ming put his hands behind his back and said arrogantly. On the other side, Wang Qing slightly raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly. He held the long spear behind his back in his hand and poured his true qi into it. With a slight shake, a thunderous explosion burst out. It's just a small trick. Murong Ming did not care at all. The origin ring on his finger flashed and a long sword of spirit level appeared in his hand. At the same time, true qi burst out of his body. He had reached the third cycle of the qi cultivation realm. No wonder young Master Murong is so confident. Seeing Murong Ming's cultivation, Chu Shiqing clicked her tongue and said. The third cycle of the qi cultivation realm could be ranked at the top among the geniuses of the Milky Way prefecture. Wang Qing narrowed his eyes. His cultivation was at the second cycle of the qi cultivation realm. He was weaker than Murong Ming, but his aura was not much weaker. Boom! The two of them started fighting. What made Chu Shiqing's expression change slightly was that although Murong Ming's cultivation and swordsmanship were superior to Wang Cheng's combat experience was too rich. Moreover, his moves were very vicious and tricky. Every time Wang Qing attacked with his spear, it was like a poisonous dragon stabbing at the weak points of Murong Ming's moves. In terms of fighting experience, Murong Ming was clearly inferior to Wang Qing. However, Murong Ming was still a core disciple of a super family. No matter if it was cultivation techniques or swordsmanship, they were all superior to Wang Qing. Therefore, he did not show any signs of weakness. I hope he can win. This way, the crystal jade lode will belong to my heavenly forging pavilion. Chu Shiqing secretly clenched her jade-like hands and prayed. This is really boring. I'll defeat you in one move. Murong Ming pointed his sword to the sky and poured his true qi into it. He displayed a powerful swordsmanship. I'll let you experience my Murong family's spirit-level swordsmanship, the mysterious heavenly sword art. Murong Ming waved his sword and swept it across. His sword qi was unrestrained, like the might of the heavens. Wang Qing instantly vomited blood, but he was still holding on. You're just holding on. Murong Ming sneered. He was looking down on Wang Qing even more. However, at this moment, Wang Qing suddenly activated a secret technique. His true qi cultivation instantly rose to the third cycle of the qi cultivation realm. He immediately seized the opportunity and displayed his full strength with his spear. Wolf Shadow Destruction. Vigorous true qi condensed at the tip of the spear, faintly forming the shadow of a black demonic wolf. It violently pierced towards Murong Ming. Not good. Murong Ming's expression changed. After completely suppressing Wang Qing, he was too careless. At this moment, Wang Qing suddenly attacked. Even Murong Ming was unable to react in time. Puchi. Wang Qing changed from piercing to sweeping. He did not dare to directly kill Murong Ming. Murong Ming was directly swept away by this attack. He vomited large mouthfuls of blood and fiercely crashed into the ground. He looked to be in a very sorry state. Damn it, you are courting death. Do you know who I am? I am the young master of the Murong family. Do you know who my brother is? My brother is the number one genius of the Beichen mansion, Murong Ditian. Such a defeat caused Murong Ming to be endlessly furious and he was like an angry bull. However, this kind of reaction caused the disdain in Princess Yuanyang's beautiful eyes to become even more intense. Chu Shiqing's expression was also very unsightly. Originally, with Murong Ming's cultivation and strength, he would definitely win. However, unexpectedly, in terms of temperament, he was so childish and shallow. It is precisely because you are Murong family's young master that I did not kill you. Otherwise, do you think you can still bark here? Wang Qing coldly said. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and turned around to return to the North and King family's camp. You're courting death. Murong Ming revealed a malevolent expression. Losing face in front of Princess Yuanyang made him feel rather embarrassed. Alright, next is the last match. From the North family's camp, Bei Dengue slowly stepped out. He looked very relaxed. Young Miss, Yi Guqin's future, next. Chu Nanchun had a difficult expression. Chu Shiqing inwardly sighed and said, only I can go. Chu Shiqing stepped forward. Bei Dengue indifferently smiled and said, young Miss Chu, actually, you know very well that you are definitely not my opponent. Even so, I will not give up directly. Chu Shiqing's beautiful face revealed a trace of stubbornness. This crystal jade mine not only had crystal jades, but also many ores. It was very important to the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, so Chu Shiqing had to give it a try no matter what. Since you overestimate yourself, then I will. Bei Dengue took a step forward and the aura of a second cycle Qi refinement realm exploded. Excuse me. Under the pressure of this aura, even with Chu Shiqing's first cycle Qi refinement realm cultivation, she felt a little stuffy in her chest. Just as the two were about to start fighting, the sound of footsteps suddenly rang out. This was very strange. It was clearly just light footsteps, but it was like a drum that resounded in the ears of everyone in the Horse Hoof Valley. The footsteps were steady, calm, and neither fast nor slow. A black-robed figure slowly walked over. Everyone's gaze landed on the figure. Their expressions changed tremendously. It's him. It's actually him. How is this possible? What is he doing here? Chapter 27. The black-robed figure was none other than Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes. His handsome face was calm as he swept his gaze around and finally landed on Chu Shiqing. Sorry, I'm late. It's okay, it's good that you're here. Chu Shiqing finally heaved a sigh of relief. She did not know why, but she always had an inexplicable confidence in Yi Guqin, as if Yi Guqin would definitely win if he came. At the same time, Yi Guqin felt two extremely eye-catching gazes. A fiery gaze came from Princess Yuanyang. She had a very complicated expression on her face. She seemed happy and angry at the same time, with a trace of bone-deep hatred. The other gaze came from Bei Dengue. When Yi Guqin appeared, Bei Dengue's gaze was fixed on him. You actually didn't die, and you even killed my younger brother, Bei Ling. Bei Dengue no longer had the calm expression from before. His face was full of hatred. That's right, so you have to be careful. Yi Guqin's tone was like ice. This was an instinctive hatred. After all, it was Bei Dengue who had plotted against Yi Guqin and caused his death. Brat, you are indeed very bold. Bei Qiu's face was gloomy. Yi Guqin's aunt, Xian Su, had casually killed Bei Ming, the Bei family's elder, and the Bei family did not even have the slightest reaction. This caused the Bei family's reputation in the entire Tianhe province to plummet. This caused everyone in the Bei family to hate Yi Guqin to the bone. This Yi Guqin is a helper that I invited. If your Bei family dares to touch him, my Heavenly Forging Pavilion will definitely not sit by and watch, Chu Shiqing said in a deep voice. Inviting Yi Guqin to fight is simply a joke. Bei Dengue laughed coldly with some contempt. Not only Bei Dengue, the Bei family, the Wang family, and even some people from the Heavenly Forging Pavilion were puzzled as to why Chu Shiqing would invite Yi Guqin to take action. If it was Yi Guqin, who was once the head of the Milky Way Prefecture's 7 prides, then there would be nothing to say. However, Yi Guqin was now almost a cripple. Even though they had heard that he had recultivated and received Xia Yubing's sword, in the eyes of the crowd, he was no longer at his former peak. Is he Yi Guqin? He doesn't look that powerful. When Murong Ming saw that Princess Yuanyang's eyes were fixed on Yi Guqin, he instinctively felt disgusted with Yi Guqin. Whether it's a joke or not, we'll know after we fight. Yi Guqin didn't say anything more and summoned his Tribulation Dust Sword, releasing the aura of an Essence Origin 5th Stage Cultivator. What? Are you kidding me? Refined Origin Stage? What kind of courage does Yi Guqin have? He's only at the essence origin 5th stage, yet he dares to fight a Qi refinement realm genius? When Yi Guqin's aura was released, not to mention the two families of the Northern King, even some of the people from the Heavenly Forging Pavilion were dumbfounded. 5th stage essence origin stage. What a joke. Murong Ming seemed to have found a place to vent his anger, and he mercilessly mocked her with a harsh tone. 5th stage essence origin stage. Princess Yuanyang's eyes were filled with deep meaning. Although she couldn't help but feel a trace of disappointment, she still wanted to know if Yi Guqin was really that person. Miss, this. Chu Nanchuan's expression didn't look too good. Chu Shiqing shook her head and sighed. Right now, we can only believe in Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin didn't care about the disdainful, cold, or mocking gazes of the people around him. His heart was like a boulder, and he was no longer moved by external things. Yi Guqin, with your current cultivation, you're just courting death if you fight me. You killed my younger brother. Even if you're mysterious and is protecting you, I won't let you go. Bei Dangue's eyes were filled with hatred. You're allowed to plot against me, but I'm not allowed to kill your younger brother. What kind of logic is that? Yi Guqin sneered. What are you talking about? Don't slander me. Bei Dangue's eyes flashed, and he unsheathed his two swords. Unlike ordinary sword cultivators, Bei Dangue used two swords. One of the swords was completely red and emitted flames, while the other was completely silver and flashed with lightning. These were Bei Dangue's top-grade spirit swords, the thunder and fire swords. Kill! Without any hesitation, Bei Dangue and Yi Guqin attacked at the same time. The hatred between the two was irreconcilable, and they could only fight. Boom! Bei Dangue's true qi surged, and the aura of a second transformation qi refinement realm gushed out. He waved the fire sword in his hand, and the sword qi accompanied by flames slashed toward Yi Guqin. If it were an ordinary expert of the essence realm, they wouldn't be able to resist this move. However, Yi Guqin was different. He had too many tricks and trump cards. Boom! Although Yi Guqin was only at the 5th stage of the essence realm, he had ignited his qi and blood. His body was covered with a layer of faint blood-red flames, and his aura was rising steadily. Although he still couldn't compare to Bei Dangue, who had reached the second transformation qi refinement realm, the gap between them had narrowed. A secret technique that squeezes out qi and blood? Not only can it not last long, but it will also damage the foundation of the body. Seeing Yi Guqin's transformation, Bei Dangue sneered in his heart. Bei Dangue wasn't the only one who thought so. Most of the spectators had the same thought. However, they didn't know that not only did Yi Guqin cultivate the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra, he had also passed 2 blood tribulations of the physical body. He had also cultivated the body metamorphosis scripture, and his qi and blood were incomparably strong. These losses couldn't hurt his foundation at all, and he could recover quickly. Yi Guqin held the calamity dust sword in his hand, and the flames of qi and blood lingered on the blade, colliding with Bei Dangue's fire sword. When the two collided, flames shot out in all directions. A powerful rebounding force came from the calamity dust sword, accompanied by true qi, and violently shook Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin took 4 or 5 steps back before he could disperse the rebounding force. On the other hand, Bei Dangue didn't even take a step back. However, Yi Guqin's performance didn't cause the people around to laugh at him. Instead, they were a little surprised. Yi Guqin really has the power to fight? Chu Nanchun was surprised. Not only him, but all the spectators were the same. Because in their impression, the qi refining realm and the qi refining realm were not at the same level at all. One used the qi refining realm, while the other used true qi. They were originally unequal. However, Yi Guqin could contend with Bei Dangue with his cultivation at the 5th level of the qi refining realm. In the eyes of the spectators, this was already extremely incredible. I knew it. The former young sword master is definitely not so simple. Chu Shiqing's eyes shone with a strange light. As for Princess Yuanyang, her beautiful red phoenix eyes lit up as she stared fixedly at Yi Guqin. This caused Murong Ming, who was standing to one side, to feel extremely displeased. Even his gaze towards Yi Guqin contained a trace of jealousy and hatred. Clang! 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 In the field, the two people's swords clashed. Both Bei Dangue and Yi Guqin didn't hold back at all, and both of their attacks were deadly. Well, I don't have the patience to waste time with you here. Bei Dangue used his thunder and fire swords and performed the diffraction sword technique. The dazzling sword shadows transformed into dozens of light shadows. Bei Dangue's mastery of the diffraction sword technique had long surpassed Bei Ling's. However, such a confusing sword technique was completely useless against Yi Guqin. His superb mastery of the way of the sword allowed him to distinguish the real and fake sword shadows with a single glance. Swoosh! Yi Guqin attacked with his sword. It was the meteor piercing the moon. It's just the lousy piercing the moon sword technique. Seeing Yi Guqin perform the piercing the moon sword technique, whether it was the Bei family, Murong Ming, or the others, they all sneered. Even ordinary martial artists wouldn't be willing to practice such a lousy sword technique. Meteor piercing the moon. Yi Guqin performed the piercing the moon sword technique's ultimate move. The tip of his sword moved forward, passing through the many sword shadows and directly touching the real sword shadow. Clang! The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing could be heard. Bei Dangue was astonished. He didn't expect Yi Guqin to see through the sword shadows so easily. So what? Have a taste of this move. Bei Dangue performed the diffraction sword technique again. This time, he directly performed the ultimate move of the diffraction sword technique, diffraction shadow. In an instant, dozens of sword shadows were as swift as flowing light. They were like shadows, attacking Yi Guqin at the same time. The most terrifying thing was that each sword shadow was filled with vigorous vital energy and had a strong killing power. The ultimate move of the diffraction sword technique. Bei Dangue is indeed a genius. It's not easy to cultivate the Xiantian sword technique to a small success, the spectators exclaimed. Everyone from the Bei family, including the elders of the North Chiu family, smiled knowingly. I wonder if Yi Guqin can withstand it. Chu Shiqing looked worried. However, in the face of Bei Dangue's ultimate move, Yi Guqin's expression didn't change. The 13 vessel meridians on the Jiaichen sword lit up, causing the power of the sword qi to increase dramatically. Yi Guqin swung his sword again. It was just one sword, but the bright sword light almost blinded the eyes of the surrounding spectators. The sword light was too beautiful and bright. It was like a cold moon falling from the night sky. The ultimate move of the piercing moon swordsmanship, Moonfall. It's actually the ultimate move. When Yi Guqin attacked, the surrounding people were stunned and couldn't help but exclaim. Although the piercing moon swordsmanship was not mainstream, it was very difficult to cultivate any swordsmanship to a large success. Without absolute comprehension and perseverance, it was very difficult to cultivate it. It's really him. After seeing Yi Guqin use Moonfall, Princess Yuanyang's beautiful eyes were shocked. Although she had heard that Yi Guqin was the mysterious masked man who killed Bei Ling that day, she wasn't too sure. However, when Moonfall was used, Princess Yuanyang was almost certain that Yi Guqin was the masked man that day. This also made her feel a little complicated. After all, she wanted to take Yi Guqin as a swordsman, but the combat power that Yi Guqin showed that day was not weaker than her, and was even a little stronger. However, Princess Yuanyang really didn't know that Yi Guqin's current strength was enough to crush her. Yi Guqin held the Calamity Dust sword in his hand. The beautiful and gorgeous sword light broke through the many sword shadows and stabbed towards Bei Dangue. Bei Dangue's expression was a little impatient. The sword momentum changed again. The originally swift and ethereal sword shadows quickly turned into a violent sword qi. Stormy swordsmanship. Boom! The swords collided, and the violent sword qi spread out like a waterfall. After activating the power of qi and blood and possessing the power of dragon and elephant, although the gap between Yiguchen and Bei Dengue was infinitely closed, there was still a gap between their realms. After this attack, Yiguchen retreated dozens of steps. The qi and blood in his body were shaken, and he was seriously injured. However, this kind of injury was not a big problem for Yiguchen's current physique. On the other hand, Bei Dengue also retreated a few steps, but he was obviously better than Yiguchen. So what if you recultivate? You can't keep up with me anymore. Next move, I'll finish you. Chapter 28. Bei Dengue attacked again, and the weapon veins on his lightning fire swords lit up, shooting out lightning and flames at the same time. He swept out with both swords, and the sword light surged out. The surrounding ground couldn't withstand the pressure, and cracks appeared. Minor accomplishment, it's definitely the minor accomplishment realm. The Raging Wave sword technique is considered top-notch even among the Xiantian sword techniques. Bei Dengue has actually cultivated it to the minor accomplishment realm. Seeing Bei Dengue make a move, the surrounding spectators cried out in surprise. Chu Shiqing frowned, because the Raging Wave sword technique that Bei Dengue used did indeed give people a lot of pressure. Yiguchen, I'll defeat you with this Raging Wave sword technique. Bei Dengue waved both swords at the same time, and sword energy swept out like a huge wave. Layers of sword energy poured down on Yiguchen like surging waves. It was the Raging Wave sword technique's minor accomplishment skill, Raging Wave sword technique. Bei Dengue's cultivation was at the second transformation Qi refinement realm, so the Raging Wave sword technique was extremely powerful. Seeing this, Yiguchen lit up the weapon veins on his tribulation dust sword again, and then he drew a circle with his sword. It was an extremely simple circle that seemed to be able to contain everything. Tai Chi sword technique. This move. When Yiguchen used Tai Chi sword technique, Wang Zhan and Princess Yuanyang's eyes narrowed. They had seen Yiguchen use this sword technique before. At that time, Yiguchen's cultivation was far weaker than now, and he relied on Tai Chi sword technique to block Bei Ling's killing move. Boom! The incomparably violent sword Qi poured down on Yiguchen's sword. In an instant, the huge force that came through caused Yiguchen's arms to make cracking sounds. His arms actually split open and blood seams appeared on them. Although Yiguchen's techniques weren't weak, the gap between their realms was still a big problem. Yiguchen, pay for my brother's life. Bei Dengue's eyes were bloodshot. He didn't care about the ant behind Yiguchen, he just wanted Yiguchen to die. Boom! The powerful sword energy suddenly exploded, like raging waves hitting the shore. Yiguchen's Tai Chi sword technique couldn't withstand the pressure and collapsed. Even so, most of the sword energy of the Raging Wave sword technique was neutralized, and only a small amount of sword energy bombarded Yiguchen's body. Die! Bei Dengue sneered. He was sure that although the power of the violent sword wave had been reduced by more than half, it was still more than enough to kill a martial artist in the essential origin realm. At the same time, the rest of the spectators shook their heads, knowing that this battle had already been decided. As expected, it still doesn't work. Chu Shiqing sighed. Yiguchen. On the other side, Princess Yuanyang clenched her hand tightly. It's Dengue's, it's good enough that you can hold on for so long. Murong Ming crossed his arms, a hint of disdain in his mouth. However, they didn't notice that when the sword energy bombarded Yiguchen's body, a golden light suddenly surged on the surface of Yiguchen's skin. Boom! Yiguchen's body was violently blasted away. Brother, I've finally avenged you. Bei Dengue held his two swords, feeling as if a stone had been lifted from his heart. Well, it's obvious who's the winner and loser now. This crystal jade mine will be controlled by the North family and the North family. Bei Qiu stepped forward and said. Chu Shiqing gritted her teeth, she was very unwilling. Oh, is that so? Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, a somewhat weak but firm voice suddenly sounded. This is... Everyone's gaze uniformly fell in the direction of the voice. Yiguchin slowly stood up, the clothes on his chest torn, revealing some sword wounds on his chest. Although the wounds looked bloody, they didn't hurt his bones. Bei Dengue, your sword is not bad, but it's not enough. Yiguchin's tone was calm from beginning to end. How is that possible? Bei Dengue stared at Yiguchin, his teeth almost breaking. The sword that was supposed to kill Yiguchin did not kill him. The onlookers were even more shocked. Although Yiguchin's Taiji swordsmanship had neutralized most of the power of that sword, it was definitely not something that a warrior in the Essence realm could block. What a strong physical strength. Chu Nanchun stared at Yiguchin and sighed. It seems that Yiguchin will really give me a surprise. Chu Shiqing's beautiful face revealed a faint smile, as bright as the sun on a clear day. Impossible. How can you survive? Bei Dengue seemed to be in disbelief. Since you've already made your move, then it's my turn. Yiguchin frowned and instantly drew his sword. After passing the second minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body, coupled with the Vajra Dharma body cultivated by the Yi Jin scripture, the wound on his chest was not a big problem for Yiguchin, so Yiguchin could once again attack with all his strength. A sword light flashed past like a flash of lightning, and a muffled thunder suddenly exploded in the air. The minor technique of the split lightning sword, thunder crash. Although it was a swordsmanship from his previous life, its power was definitely not inferior to a Xiantian swordsmanship. Bei Dengue hurriedly used the thunder and fire swords to block, but he was blasted back a few steps, and his palm was numb from the shock. Using the frenzy sword wave consumed a lot of Bei Dengue's genuine chi by more than half. However, Yiguchin's chi and blood were incomparably vigorous, and the essence chi he transformed was naturally also extremely vigorous, so his endurance was far greater than Bei Dengue's. No, if this goes on, it will not be good. Bei Dengue made a prompt decision and attacked again. With this attack, the sword move changed again. As the two swords were waved, it seemed to resonate with the void, and a wave of vibration suddenly burst out. This is the Bei family's Xiantian swordsmanship, vacuum sword wave. Rumor has it that it is the most difficult Xiantian swordsmanship to cultivate. Bei Dengue has actually cultivated the vacuum sword wave to a higher level. However, rumor has it that the vacuum sword wave is a remnant of a spiritual level swordsmanship, and Bei Dengue has actually cultivated it. It seems that Yiguchin is in trouble. When the surrounding spectators saw Bei Dengue use the vacuum sword wave, they all exclaimed in surprise. This farce should be over. Since he has used this move, Yiguchin has no way out. Bei Qiu, the elder of the Bei family, snorted coldly. However, at this moment, Yiguchin's expression was slightly strange. Not only had he also cultivated the vacuum sword wave, but he had also cultivated the vacuum sword wave to a small success level. He could see that the vacuum sword wave that Bei Dengue used now had a total of 7 layers, which was already considered a very good move. However, it was a pity that he had encountered Yiguchin. Yiguchin injected his profound chi into the tribulation dust, and in an instant, all 26 weapons were lit up. A vigorous energy was brewing in the sword body, and then... Vacuum sword wave, overlapping waves. Boom! 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 One after another, transparent sword waves swept out, and the momentum far exceeded that of Bei Dengue. After the 20 layers of sword waves spread out, they actually stacked together in a short breath. The terrifying shockwave tore apart Bei Dengue's 7 sword ripples in an instant, and then it crashed towards Bei Dengue with a loud rumble. Not good. The North Qiu kingdom immediately attacked, and the terrifying power of the godly soul realm exploded. The attack directly dispersed the 20 layers of sword wave, and the North Qiu kingdom even took a small step back. A godly soul realm expert was forced to take a small step back by a profound chi realm warrior. Silence. The entire Horseshoe Valley was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. One could even hear the sound of someone swallowing their saliva. Really? Vacuum sword wave, and it's a small success level vacuum sword wave. A martial cultivator's throat was dry as he spoke with difficulty. That is known as the most difficult Xiantian sword technique to cultivate, and it's a remnant of a spiritual level sword technique. How did Yi Guqin get it, and even cultivate it to a small success level? A Bei family expert said somewhat helplessly. Then, there was a complete uproar. Vacuum sword wave, you got it from my younger brother, right? But how is it possible? How long has it been, and you can cultivate the vacuum sword wave to a small success level? Bei Dangue gritted his teeth so hard that his lips were bleeding. He was unwilling to accept it. He did not believe that Yi Guqin had not only defeated him, but also used the Bei family's vacuum sword wave to defeat him. With his talent, he had been immersed in the vacuum sword wave for so long, but he could only display 7 layers of sword wave. But what about Yi Guqin? That was a full 20 layers of sword wave, and it was a small trick that was stacked together. Even the North Chiu Kingdom, who was at the godly soul realm, was forced to take a small step back. Monster. A complete swordsmanship monster. At this moment, everyone looked at Yi Guqin differently. It could be said that Yi Guqin's performance this time had really shocked everyone. Miss, you really have good taste. Little friend Ye's talent in swordsmanship is indeed monstrous. Chu Nanchun could not help but sigh. Actually, I also did not expect Yi Guqin to be so strong. Chu Shiqing did not expect Yi Guqin's performance to be far beyond her expectations. He is back again. Princess Yuanyang's beautiful eyes were a little dazed. It was as if she saw the heroic young man who had won the title of Master Swordsman. This time, the battle had also completely come to an end. In the battle between Bei Dangue and Yi Guqin, it was the North Chiu Kingdom who stepped in and blocked Yi Guqin's stacked waves. The winner and loser had naturally been decided. This battle can be decided now, right? Chu Shiqing walked over with light steps and said with a faint smile. Humph. The elders of the North Wang and North Wang families looked a little ugly. As for Bei Dangue, he was still in a daze, as if he had not recovered from the blow. When the North Chiu Kingdom saw this, his eyes were as gloomy as water. He looked at Yi Guqin and said coldly, very well, Yi Guqin, this matter will not end like this. Yi Guqin's expression was indifferent and casual. Even if he had defeated Bei Dangue, he did not have a trace of excitement. I, Yi Guqin, will accompany you with any means. Then, the people of the North Wang and North Wang families left dejectedly. The remaining people of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion cheered. Sitting on the entire crystal jade mine, there were many ores in the mine that were suitable for casting. For the Heavenly Forging Pavilion, it was definitely a great opportunity and could even make the Heavenly Forging Pavilion more prosperous. Yi Guqin, a hoarse female voice sounded from behind Yi Guqin. He turned around and saw Princess Yuanyang, who had a complicated look in her eyes. You are injured. This is a spiritual recovery pill, it can heal some injuries. Princess Yuanyang bit her red lips and took out an elixir. Although it was not an extremely precious healing pill, it was not a common item that could be seen everywhere. This scene was seen by Murong Ming, who was at the side, and burned with jealousy. Chapter 29. Thank you for your kindness, Princess, but there's no need for that. Yi Guqin politely declined. Firstly, he didn't want to have anything to do with Princess Yuanyang. Secondly, with his strong recovery ability, he didn't need the spiritual recovery pill. Ha, I even said that I wanted to take you in as a sword attendant. Now that I look at it, I'm really laughable. Princess Yuanyang laughed self-deprecatingly. She was born in a noble family and thought highly of herself. She had developed an arrogant and willful personality. She could get whatever she wanted. However, she was rejected by Yi Guqin again and again. However, it was also because of this that Yi Guqin's figure was deeply engraved in her heart. Seeing Princess Yuanyang like this, Yi Guqin sighed and didn't say anything. Yi Guqin, it's all thanks to you this time. Chu Shiqing walked over in a very good mood. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Yi Guqin cupped his hands. Thank you, young Master Murong. Chu Shiqing turned to the side. Although her tone was still polite, it was also slightly casual. Murong Ming was not an idiot. After hearing Chu Shiqing's words, his expression became a bit ugly. He looked at Yi Guqin. His gaze was filled with hostility. Feeling the threatening gaze, Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. He knew about the Murong family. It was a super family in the Beichin prefecture. There were 5 great families in the Milky Way prefecture, and none of them could compare to the Murong family. In the Beichin prefecture, there were only 2 powerful families, the Murong family and the Situ family. Feeling Murong Ming's hostility, Yi Guqin ignored it. This matter is over. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Yi Guqin cupped his hands. Wait, Yi Guqin, aren't you curious about the crystal jade vein? Chu Shiqing asked. Is there anything special about the crystal jade vein? Yi Guqin asked. Chu Shiqing muttered to herself and said, Princess and young Master Murong must be tired from the battle just now. Master Chu, bring them back to the Heavenly Forging Pavilion first. Yes. Chu Nanchun understood tacitly. Princess Yuanyang bit her lip, glanced at Yi Guqin, then turned and left. Murong Ming's expression was somewhat gloomy. He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and left. Why send them away? Yi Guqin asked. Princess Yuanyang and Murong Ming both have powers behind them. Although they helped my Heavenly Forging Pavilion this time, it is inevitable that they would not have any thoughts about the things in the crystal jade lode. However, you are different. You are alone and have helped us greatly this time. Naturally, we will give you some good things. Chu Shiqing mischievously winked at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin was taken aback. He didn't expect that Chu Shiqing, who had always been scheming, would actually have such a young side to her. Come with me. Chu Shiqing brought Yi Guqin and a few people from the Heavenly Forging Pavilion into the crystal jade lode of the Horse Hoof Valley. Upon entering the lode, Yi Guqin was blinded by the densely packed crystal jade ores around him. The number of ores was truly astonishing. This time, it's all thanks to you that my Heavenly Forging Pavilion was able to take down this load. That Calamity Earth sword was bought by you with your own crystal jade, so it can't be considered a gift. I'll give you another 10,000 crystal jades. Chu Shiqing said. 10,000 crystal jades. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. This was not a small sum. However, Yi Guqin also knew that the value of this crystal jade lode was not something that could be measured with 10,000 crystal jades. In addition, let me show you something else. Chu Shiqing said mysteriously, then brought Yi Guqin to the depths of the crystal jade lode. The deeper they went into the lode, the more Yi Guqin discovered that other than the crystal jade ores, there were also many ores used to refine spirit artifacts. Just the value of these ores was not inferior to the crystal jade ores. Yi Guqin finally understood why Chu Shiqing was so determined to obtain this lode. With so many ores used for refining, the strength of the Heavenly Forging Pavilion would definitely rise to another level, and her father's authority in the Heavenly Forging Pavilion would also increase. Not long after, Chu Shiqing and Yi Guqin arrived at the deepest part of the crystal jade lode. This is... Yi Guqin looked around and discovered that there were some metal ores scattered on the walls. On the surface of these metal ores, there were many ring-shaped patterns. Yi Guqin was not proficient in artifact forging, so he was not very clear about these ores. Yi Guqin, this ore is called the Heavenly Silk Steel. Rumor has it that it is produced by a strange beast called the Heavenly Treasure Silkworm after it swallows metal. Chu Shiqing's tone carried a trace of excitement. Heavenly Silk Steel. Yi Guqin now understood why Chu Shiqing was so excited. The Heavenly Silk Steel was an extremely rare ore, and its value was astonishing. The Heavenly Silk Steel is divided into 2 types. One is the silver ring pattern, and the other is the golden ring pattern. The value of the silver ring heavenly silk steel is extremely shocking. If it's the golden ring, it's comparable to the meteorite iron. That's a precious material for forging spirit inscription divine weapons. Chu Shiqing said. It's comparable to the meteorite iron. Yi Guqin couldn't help but nod his head. It seemed that whether it was the meteorite iron or the golden ring heavenly silk steel, they were both precious materials for forging spirit inscription divine weapons. Its value far exceeded the materials used to forge spirit artifacts. Could it be that theirs? Yi Guqin's mind stirred. Sure enough, in the deepest part of the mine, there were a few pieces of heavenly silk steel. On their surface, there were golden ring-shaped patterns. Golden ring heavenly silk steel. Although it wasn't a lot, a small piece was shockingly valuable. It had to be known that Yi Guqin's calamity dust sword only had the meteorite iron mixed in. As for the golden ring heavenly silk steel in front of him, although it wasn't much, there were still 4 pieces. Yi Guqin, this golden ring heavenly silk steel contains the silk of the heavenly treasure silkworm. It's soft and tough. If you add a little to any sword you forge, it will make the sword extremely soft and tough. If you add an entire piece of heavenly silk steel, you can even forge a soft sword, Chu Shiqing said. Soft sword? Yi Guqin's mind stirred. He had once used a crepe myrtle soft sword in his previous life, and it was because of that crepe myrtle soft sword that Yi Guqin had the chance to comprehend the hard and soft sword Tao. Among the 4 great sword Taos that Yi Guqin had comprehended in his previous life, the hard and soft sword Tao was the first to be comprehended, and also the easiest to comprehend. In his previous life, Dugu Wubai used the crepe myrtle soft sword and used the hard and soft sword Tao. He could even change the direction of the sword Qi, changing between hard and soft. It was extremely magical. In this life, Yi Guqin was already prepared to comprehend the sword intent. He didn't have the chance to comprehend the Shura sword intent yet, but he could start with the hard and soft sword intent. All he lacked was a soft sword. But with the Calamity Dust sword, Yi Guqin didn't care about ordinary spiritual weapons, even if it was a supreme grade spiritual weapon. He needed a spiritual inscription divine weapon soft sword. You have contributed greatly to us being able to obtain the crystal jade mine this time. This piece of golden ring heavenly silkworm silk steel is my gift to you. Chu Shiqing was very generous and directly gave Yi Guqin a piece of golden ring heavenly silkworm silk steel. One had to know that this was a material used to forge spiritual inscription divine weapons. It was comparable to the meteorite iron. Yi Guqin hesitated for a moment before accepting it. Alright, this matter has been smoothly concluded. Yi Guqin, your matter will probably spread through the entire Milky Way prefecture. It seems like it won't be long before you become the leader of the prodigies of heaven again. Chu Shiqing was currently in a very good mood and said with a smile. Yi Guqin shook his head. How could things be so simple? Chu Shiqing slightly nodded and said, indeed. Yi Guqin, after you recultivated, your cultivation is extraordinary. You can even defeat Bei Dengue. However, that Xia Yubing is still a huge mountain pressing down on your head. Xia Yubing. Yi Guqin frowned. There would be a battle between him and Xia Yubing. Moreover, this battle wouldn't be far away. The 10 prefectures elite meeting would be the battlefield for the 2 of them. There is still half a year before the 10 prefectures elite meeting. In this half a year, I must break through to the Qi refinement realm and grasp a type of sword intent. Only then will I have the qualifications to contend against Xia Yubing. Yi Guqin thought inwardly. With the inheritance of the North River Sword King, Xia Yubing's comprehension of sword intent would definitely not be slow. Only by comprehending sword intent would Yi Guqin have the qualifications to contend against Xia Yubing. Currently, Yi Guqin only had the opportunity to comprehend 2 types of sword intent. One was the Azura sword intent from the Blood Listening Tower's 18 Blood Prison. The other was the hard and soft sword intent that he had comprehended in his previous life. To be able to comprehend one type of sword intent, one could already be considered a prodigy of the sword Tao. However, Ye Guqin planned to comprehend two types of sword intent at the same time if he had the chance. If I want to comprehend the Azura sword will, I must have the opportunity to enter the 18-blood prison. If I want to comprehend the hard and soft sword will, I only need a soft sword. Ye Guqin pondered and quickly made up his mind. He wanted to obtain a divine spiritual inscription's soft sword. Although Chu Shiqing promised to give Ye Guqin 10,000 crystal jades, soft swords were different from ordinary sharp swords. A divine spiritual inscription's soft sword was even rarer. It could be said that even if one had crystal jades, one might not necessarily be able to buy one. Moreover, a divine spiritual inscription's soft sword was far more valuable than a sharp sword of the same level. I already have the main materials to forge a soft sword. All that's missing is a person to forge it. Ye Guqin frowned slightly. However, even Chu Shiqing's father, the great pavilion master of the heavenly forging pavilion, was only a peak 3-star blacksmith. Forging a top-grade spirit weapon was not a problem, but he was not confident in forging a divine spiritual inscription's soft sword. Moreover, a soft sword was even harder to forge. Ye Guqin thought that the great pavilion master's success rate in forging a soft sword would be pitifully low. Without any clues for the time being, Ye Guqin could only suppress the thoughts in his heart. In just a few days, the news of Ye Guqin defeating Bei Dengue spread throughout the entire Milky Way province like a kite with a broken string. Everyone was amazed that after Ye Guqin had fallen, he had actually risen again. At the same time, many people cast playful gazes towards the Xia clan. They knew that the prodigy of the Xia clan and Ye Guqin, who had returned powerfully, would definitely have a pinnacle battle. And this pinnacle battle would completely explode in the 10 prefectures elite gathering soon. Only on such a stage where the prodigies gathered would there be an extreme collision. Chapter 30. While news of the Milky Way province was spreading, in the Qi nurturing garden in the core area of the Xia family, an elegantly decorated pavilion was located in the center. The entire Qi nurturing garden was filled with the scent of spring and dense spiritual energy. All kinds of spiritual herbs and plants were flourishing. Only the surroundings of the pavilion were as cold as the earth and the sky. Even the grass and leaves were covered in a thin layer of ice. Inside the pavilion, a slender figure in a blue robe sat cross-legged on the ground. Her smooth, ice-blue hair cascaded down her skinny back like a waterfall to the ground. Around her, dense icy air filled the air and covered the ground in a layer of silver white. After an unknown period of time, the girl's delicate body suddenly trembled and she abruptly opened her icy blue eyes. Boom! A vigorous wave of true energy spread out in all directions. The fluctuation far surpassed that of Bei Dengue. Fifth cycle of Qi refinement realm. The supreme spiritual herbs and pills left behind by Chu Donglu are indeed helpful for ice true energy. My dark ice heart technique has also reached a higher level. Xia Yubing muttered in a low voice. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause quite a commotion. The fifth cycle of Qi refinement realm had already left the geniuses of the Milky Way province far behind. But even so, the most important thing for me is still the ice sword intent. If I can completely comprehend this sword intent, I will be able to obtain first place in the 10 prefectures elite gathering. At that time, I will be able to choose from the 3 great sects and the 4 great academies. Although Xia Yubing was a girl, she was very ambitious. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used such methods to frame Ye Guqin. But I heard that Ye Guqin has recovered his sword talent and defeated Bei Dengue. He is still a hidden danger. If there is a chance, I will end it in the 10 prefectures elite gathering. Xia Yubing muttered to herself in a casual tone, as if she was talking about a trivial matter. However, the surrounding temperature dropped by quite a bit. After helping Chu Shiqing obtain the crystal jade mine, Ye Guqin returned to the blood listening tower. He became the assassin's sword demon with a blood-red mask. During his free time, Ye Guqin would go to the heavenly forging pavilion to discuss sword forging techniques with Chu Shiqing. Thus, the so-called forging and smithing refers to the combination of materials and the use of jinqi to open up the vessel meridians. Inside the pavilion, Chu Shiqing and Yi Guqin were talking. Talking with Miss Chu has indeed benefited me greatly. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. He really wanted to forge a sword that belonged to him. If there's a chance, I can bring you to the forging room of my heavenly forging pavilion. It might be better to personally experience the forging. Chu Shiqing said with a smile. At this moment, there was a sudden clamor from below the pavilion. Chu Shiqing and Yi Guqin both stood up and went downstairs. At the entrance of the heavenly forging pavilion, an old man in ragged clothes was at the entrance, surrounded by a few female attendants. Him again? Chu Shiqing raised her eyebrows slightly. Yi Guqin looked over. It was the old drunkard from before. Yi Guqin had given him 10 crystal jades to buy wine. This old man wants wine, only wine. The old drunkard, who reeked of alcohol, rolled on the ground. What a rotten old man, how dare you behave so atrociously in my heavenly forging pavilion? Guards, chase him away. A female attendant scolded with her eyebrows raised. Wait. A calm and calm voice sounded. Yi. Young Master Yi. When the female attendant saw Yi Guqin, she hurriedly retreated to the side. If you want to drink, let's go. Yi Guqin flung his sleeves. The old drunkard was startled, he stared at Yi Guqin's back, something seemed to flash in his muddy old eyes, then he stood up, patted the dust off his body, and followed. In the tavern, Yi Guqin and the old drunkard sat opposite each other. In front of them was a table full of good wine. The old drunkard wolfed down his food, while Yi Guqin only held his wine bowl and sipped. After a long while, almost all the wine on the table had been finished by the old drunkard. Yi Guqin had only finished the wine in his bowl. Brat, you don't like to drink? The old drunkard glanced sideways at Yi Guqin. Wine messes with the mind, drinking a little is good for the mood, drinking a lot is bad for the body. Yi Guqin said indifferently. I've finished drinking. This old man is leaving. The old drunkard wiped his mouth with his dirty sleeve and was about to leave. Sigh. Yi Guqin suddenly sighed. Brat, what are you sighing for? The old drunkard stared at Yi Guqin. We are all people who have fallen to the same fate. Why should we have known each other before? Yi Guqin seemed to be implying something. Brat, what did you say? A dark light flashed in the old drunkard's eyes. I was once the head of the 7 great geniuses of the Heavenly River Province. I was framed, the innate sword embryo in my body was stolen, and my sword vein was crippled. I suffered countless slander, curses, and humiliation. May I ask, Senior, am I considered miserable? Yi Guqin casually said. The word, Senior, caused the old drunkard's gaze to constrict. What do your words have to do with this old man? The old drunkard said in a low voice. Senior, aren't you also a person who has fallen to the same fate as this brat? Otherwise, why would you drown your sorrows in alcohol and numb yourself? Yi Guqin said. What nonsense are you spouting? This old man doesn't understand. The old drunkard flicked his sleeves and was about to leave. Senior, you're a blacksmith, right? The old drunkard suddenly stopped in his tracks. I noticed that there are many thick calluses on the web between your thumb and forefinger. It's a result of many years of blacksmithing. Although you reek of alcohol, it can't hide the smell of smoke. Lastly, and most importantly, you're also a sword fanatic. The old drunkard slowly turned around after Yi Guqin finished speaking. Brat, how can you be so sure that this old man is a sword fanatic? Intuition. Yi Guqin smiled mysteriously. However, as a sword demon who had been immersed in the way of the sword for more than 40 years and dominated the world, he was extremely sensitive to people who were also sword fanatics. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was intuition. The old drunkard took a deep look at Yi Guqin and suddenly said, Brat, you have a damaged divine weapon with spiritual inscriptions, don't you? Yes, but I don't know what you mean by this. Yiguchen nodded. Humph, you treated me to so much wine. I'm not the kind of person who takes advantage of others. Give me the sword. The old drunkard stretched out a pair of dirty, withered hands. If it were an ordinary person, not to mention a priceless divine weapon with spiritual inscriptions, even an ordinary spiritual weapon would not be casually handed over to a person who he did not know the details of. However, Yiguchen just smiled faintly. With a flash of his origin ring, the dust fell into the old drunkard's eyes. The old drunkard's withered hand, which was like a bird's claw, gently caressed the sword as if he was caressing his wife whom he had not seen for many years. Then, he turned around and left without even saying goodbye to Yiguchen. Yiguchen smiled and did not chase after the old drunkard. He knew that the old drunkard was not an ordinary person, but from his crippled hands, the old drunkard must have experienced some unknown setbacks. However, Yiguchen did not intend to find out the old drunkard's identity for now. After that, Yiguchen returned to his days of cultivation. He lived in a small residence in the bamboo forest outside of Shang River City. On one hand, he increased his cultivation level. On the other hand, he honed his swordsmanship as the Sword Devil of the Blood Listening Tower. During this period of time, Yiguchen's cultivation base rose from the 5th level of the Essence Yuan stage to the 7th level of the Essence Yuan stage. Although it was not as crazy as before, it was still a steady improvement. At the same time, he was surprised to see that the Blood Listening Tower's Sword Devil also made it onto the Heaven Pride list. Although he was only ranked in the 40s, everyone in the Tianhe prefecture and the surrounding prefectures knew that another Heaven Pride wearing a blood-red mask had appeared in the Blood Listening Tower. I heard that the Sword Devil from the Blood Listening Tower is really terrifying. I don't think he has ever failed an assassination. That's right. Including the Sword Devil, Nightingale, Yushicho, and the red-haired ghost, the Blood Listening Tower has a total of 4 Heaven Prides on the Heaven Pride list. Among them, Yushicho is ranked 4th, the red-haired ghost is ranked 13th, Nightingale is ranked 37th, and the Sword Devil has only appeared recently and is ranked 42nd. Unfortunately, the 10 prefectures elite gathering is held to prepare the disciples of the 3 great sects and 4 great academies. They are all assassins of the Blood Listening Tower and naturally cannot join the 7 great factions. Yiguchen walked along the streets of Shanghe City as he listened to the gossip. He was a little surprised that the Sword Devil's reputation had spread so quickly in such a short period of time. Yiguchen changed into his black clothes and blood mask and entered one of the Blood Listening Tower's stations to accept missions as usual. However, when Yiguchen arrived at the underground space, he suddenly felt that the atmosphere was unusual. Many of the Blood Listening Tower assassins were also looking at the end of the underground space where a jade slip was placed. A blood-red jade slip that was as dazzling as fresh blood. A blood-red jade slip. The most difficult and dangerous mission. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.